Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm really excited that you are about to listen to some in-depth discussion that I had with Craig from the Slycast Podcast. So this episode was recorded a little while ago. I would think it was recorded when Creed 2 was first out. And you may have heard Craig mention on a few of our past episodes that we've done together that we have yet to had released this conversation that I had with Craig. So in this first part of this episode that you're about to hear is Craig interviewing me, Ryan, for his Slycast podcast. So he's released this episode on the Slycast. Now, if you are a new listener of the Going the Distance, the Rocky Series podcast, and you're listening to this episode on your feed and you don't know who Craig is, then I'm going to plug him right now because Craig loves to be plugged by me. So Craig is one of the co-hosts of the Slycast Podcast. He's a fantastic podcaster, a great guy, and I haven't met him in real life or in person yet, but he's a great friend, a great social friend online, and I love podcasting with him. So the first part of this discussion is Craig and I talking about Creed 2 and the future of the Rocky franchise. The second part of this episode is Craig doing the same type of discussion with Mike Kunda. Now, Mike Kunda is the world's #1 Rocky, I hate the term impersonator, but, impersonator. And he does Rocky tours in Philadelphia of the Rocky movie filming locations. And he was actually just today, literally, at the time of me recording this intro, was given a shout out by none other than Sylvester Stallone on his Instagram, saying to check out Mike and to check out his documentary that he's featured in called The Pretender. So while you're in quarantine during this COVID stuff, check out The Pretender, starring Mike Kunda. That's Kunda. Yeah, obviously a Rocky expert, a Stallone expert in his own right, and he has a discussion with Craig after my discussion with Craig about Creed. And I will say that I don't know how that discussion went. When you're listening to this feed, I too will be listening to the Mike Kunda and Craig conversation for the first time. So hopefully it's good because I'm putting it on my show. So again, Craig runs the Slycast Podcast. So this same episode, minus my introduction, will be on his feed as well. But I just wanted to give him a shout out because there might be people who listen to my podcast or coming onto this episode for the first time for whatever reason and don't know about the Slycast. We've got a couple new Patreons. I just want to let you guys know, thank you so much. We'll give those shout outs on a future episode. We are already recorded like a couple episodes, so don't panic. If we haven't read out your email or if we haven't given you a shout out on a Patreon and all that good stuff, it will happen. It's just due to families and the virus and all this stuff and work and not working or whatever it might be, schedules are all out of the whack here, so we've banked some episodes. So just like TV shows, right? You don't watch TV recorded episodes of your favorite show when it was filmed that day, right? We're behind real time, so we keep the emails coming, please. gtdwithrr@gmail.com if you want your email read on the air. Follow us on Twitter. Join our Facebook group and donate to Patreon. All those things help out the show. I know times are tough for people. We understand that. And I was extremely grateful for the 2 individuals that have just recently become patrons. The supporters, thank you so much. We love you guys. Keep punching. Ding, ding. All that good stuff. Enjoy this Creed discussion.
All right, and welcome back to the continuing saga that is our Creed 2 super special super episode. And it is my honor and privilege to bring back onto the show from the Going the Distance, the Rocky Series podcast, Ryan. Ryan, welcome back.
Thank you, brother. And I will say it again. I'll say it 100 times. The honor is all mine to be on your show.
Excellent, excellent. It's funny because it feels like I've talked about Creed 2 more than I've talked about any other movie in this past 30 days since the movie's been out.
It's insane. And in fact, I just finished listening to your interview that you had with Sean Malloy of I Must Break This podcast. You guys talked about that, how our friends or coworkers, and they did the same to me. They came up to me at work after Creed 2 came out. They know I'd seen it. What'd you think? Did you like it? And they truly do kind of value your opinion as kind of a Stallone, quote-unquote, expert to see how we like the movie. And then they'll ask me, of course, the follow-up question was, well, do you like it just because it's Rocky, or is it a good movie in and of itself? So my answer to that question is yes to both.
Yeah. And I mean, it really is. It's so weird because I'm not entirely sure who mentioned it in one of the many discussions I've had on and off the air about this movie. You know, there's really no other character like Rocky that has spanned as many decades, as many movies as he's had, and even sort of popping up in what has to be considered a spin-off. I know people call this Rocky 7 and Rocky 8, but I mean, they're really not Rocky movies because there's certain things that don't happen that you'd expect in a Rocky movie.
That is a discussion in and of itself. And I know when Creed 1 came out, it was kind of easier to call Creed 1 Rocky 7 because we didn't know even at the time, were we going to get a sequel? Would it be worthy to get a sequel? So Rocky 7 or Creed Part 1 was a lot easier. But now that we have Part 2, and Part 2 did so well, and both with critics and audiences, do we now call it officially a different franchise?
I think you have to, just because it's weird because Creed was set up where you could go into Creed cold without seeing a Rocky movie, right?
That was their goal. And it was more like if you knew the Rocky films like you and I did, of course, millions of others, there's a lot of Easter eggs and things you could chuckle and laugh at. But the average audience member could see Creed Part 1 not having never seen a Rocky film. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the major discussion points to sort of say how this isn't a Rocky movie per se, the fact that we don't really get that key scene between Rocky and Marianne about all the stuff they have to work through. And you'd get that in a Rocky movie, but in a Creed movie, it's not really integral to the plot, right?
Yeah, and that could be the reason. That's actually a very good point. That could be the reason we didn't get that sequence. I think it would have served the Rocky fans very well. But at the same time, wasn't there mention in the Creed films, you'll have to remind me, where did Rocky ever talk about not being able to stop the fight? Not having the strength to stop the fight? I know we know that as viewers of Rocky films. I'm just trying to remember the dialogue was ever said to Adonis or to Marianne or to anyone, that he kind of expressed his regret not being strong enough to stop it.
You know what? I really don't recall that. If they were going to address it, that definitely would have been something that we heard in Creed 2 as opposed to the first Creed, because Adonis doesn't really give Rocky a hard time about his father dying because Rocky couldn't throw in the towel.
And that's silly to even blame Rocky. And I think I kind of want to, on my end of the Rocky Series podcast, to officially say it's not Rocky's fault that Apollo's dead in any way, shape, or form. I know he kind of takes the blame on himself because that's just the Rocky character. But look, Apollo was a grown man, and he knew what he was doing. And he put himself in that position. He refused to get himself out of the ring. He refused to stay down when he should have or stop the fight on his own. Even Rocky said in the corner, like, we got to stop this fight. He's killing you.
Yeah.
You know, Apollo just said, you're not going to stop nothing.
Yeah, and that's a point that Mike Kunda's brought up before, too. But as a friend and as a person with maybe an objective view of how the fight's going, Rocky might have had more of a responsibility. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd be able to hold him criminally liable or anything like that.
No.
It definitely brings up an interesting point about the end of Creed 2, because Ivan is able to throw in the towel on his son. You know, there's been so many different interpretations of that, and my take on it is sort of, it's an ultimate moment of love from a father to a son, but also psychologically it's Drago saying to Rocky, here, I'm able to do something you weren't able to do, and that's a victory.
I don't think Drago was thinking about Rocky at all. I don't think there was a victory in his mind over Rocky. I don't even know if he even recognized from 30 years ago that towel should have been thrown for Apollo. Like, I don't know what he carried with him with that history.
That's an excellent point, Ryan.
I think as a viewer, we could dissect that, but I think as far as the Dragos are concerned, I think it was just more of a nod again to the Rocky IV throwing the towel moment, but at the same time, it was Drago being able to do that which Rocky couldn't do, but I don't think Drago thought that.
Yeah, you know what? I feel kind of silly now, because I broke what is the cardinal rule as a critical movie viewer. In my interpretation, I was using information that I had as a viewer that realistically Drago didn't have. Drago was in the midst of a fight, so he's not going to be aware of what's going on in Apollo's corner, right?
Right.
I appreciate you being so frustrated with my take on it, and this is why I love having these discussions and why I wanted to make sure you were a part of this Creed 2 episode, because, goodness, yeah, I mean, I almost feel silly thinking that now.
Oh, not at all. Don't be silly. I mean, look, we feel as a personal viewer, and I know we all feel this way as Rocky fanatics, the many hosts and the many listeners that do this show, we all feel our own personal connection with the films. Like, we all feel that we're almost responsible for the films. And so sometimes we put ourselves in the film thinking every character knows what we know as a viewer. So give yourself a little bit of slack there. Mm-hmm. We're such a part of the journey that we sometimes forget that the other members of the journey in the film don't know what's going on with the other members of the film.
Yeah. So while we're on it, do you want to touch on anything you might not have touched upon in any of your other recorded conversations for Creed 2 related to, starting with Dolph Lundgren and the Ivan Drago character?
Well, I will say for our quick and dirty review that my brother Ruben and I did for our show, it was quick and dirty, and I really admired everyone else's reviews better than our own. I feel like ours was not rushed is the word, but it was a very emotional, less than 24 hours from viewing the movie. We were just talking a lot about how it made us feel, almost more than a critical analysis. And, of course, we're going to go into even a bigger dive when we eventually get to Season 8 of the Going the Distance podcast. We're going to go scene by scene and moment by moment, do more of a dive. But certainly there's a lot to talk about. And you mentioned the Dragos. Is that what you mentioned?
Maybe Dolph Lundgren in particular or Ivan. But if you want to cover the Drago family, go for it.
Yeah, well, the Dragos were awesome. Absolutely amazing. I was surprised, legit, and pleasantly surprised just how much I wanted to see more of their story. So maybe that was a good on the writers and directors part of this film, that they didn't give us too much, that they gave us wanting more, because that's a good thing too, to want more. And they did that fine balance of showing us a lot of Drago and his son, but also not overdoing it. Bravo that we left the theater wanting more of this duo.
And did you feel like if they had possibly gone that extra couple of steps that they might have become too sympathetic?
I don't know if too sympathetic is the word. I felt sympathetic towards them more than I thought I would. I thought I was going to hate these guys. I thought it was going to be a Rocky IV situation where we just have an animal character, that these guys are just two brutes and they just want revenge. And little did we know as a viewer until you see the movie just how much of it was their redemption and how much of it was their father and son story journey. It was just so well done. There was nothing corny about this movie whatsoever. Well, there is one scene. We'll get to that. I want to respond to anyone that listens to my show. They're probably listening to this one as well. And I had an email from a faithful listener. Then I will take some time to address it during this episode if you don't mind, because it talks about the movie. But let's talk about the Drago still. So
yeah. I do agree with you there. And I think that the main point that really sort of kept us away from fully supporting the Dragos was the ending of that first Creed fight, right? Where he gets disqualified, which I thought was a brilliant writing choice. And I know everybody had speculation about how that fight was going to end. A lot of people just assumed Creed would lose, but he wins the fight, but loses the physical and mental fight, which I thought was just brilliant.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I remember dissecting the trailer so many times, and I recognized, as many people did, that Adonis coming out for his two fights had the belt both times. I caught that in the trailer. So I remember thinking, well, am I missing something here? Well, how come he has both belts? And so even knowing that he had both belts for both fights, I was still surprised by the disqualification.
Yeah, I mean, it was such an un-Rocky kind of thing, because the Rocky template is really what? You know, Rocky fights and loses, and then Rocky fights and wins. Well, we get that in Rocky 1 and 2 if you watch those as one movie, and then Rocky 3, and then Rocky 4, you know, Rocky loses the Apollo fight because he loses his best friend.
Right. We talk about the need for Creed 3. Yep. So what do we tell for a story here? And I think this is something we could discuss that hasn't really been fleshed out in all the other discussions. Yeah. It's been hinted at. But what are we going to do with a Creed 3? Do we need a Creed 3? Is Adonis a strong enough character for us as basically Rocky fans? I don't really care about Adonis. And it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I think, again, Michael B. Jordan's a great actor. I think his character was well written. I think the journey that Adonis and his wife and child take is touching and all these things. But I don't find myself getting choked up about him. Rocky makes me cry. His character makes me feel emotional. Adonis doesn't make me feel emotional. In fact, it took me a movie and a half to warm up to him.
Yeah, and it's not really fair to make parallels between Rocky as a character and Adonis as a character, because Rocky's one of the all-time great film characters, right? Rocky, even as far back as that first movie, had that, I guess we can call it street wisdom. Adonis, we never really get that from him. He's sort of just a guy moving through life and dealing with challenges. I think the arc he goes through here in Creed 2 is a full character arc that probably could have taken 2 or 3 movies to get through. But yeah, I mean, if we're setting up Creed 3 after the events of Creed 2, I'm not sure what challenges you can put in front of him. I mean, I don't think you're going to find a in-ring opponent that's going to be as imposing and as hard to beat as Victor.
That's the thing. That's the problem. That's what made Rocky 4 what it was. Drago was the ultimate. Basically, he truly was the ultimate male, not Thunderlips. Drago was the ultimate male. So yeah, Drago was the ultimate male. And what I loved about Rocky 5 was, yeah, we didn't have a main opponent in the ring because we already kind of dealt with that Rocky 4. That we had the opponent now was, or the story arc was Rocky's passing on his knowledge. And then Rocky 6, the opponent was his age. Mm-hmm. And then for Rocky Balboa, his opponent was his age. And then, of course, the Creed franchise was a whole new story. So I guess what I'm getting at for Creed 3, okay, back to Creed 2. What I liked about Adonis' character in Creed 2, I should say, was they told in a good way the story arc of Adonis, and it kind of packed it all into one movie, almost in a way they weren't too sure if they're going to get a Creed 3. That's kind of what I guess I'm getting at. It's like I feel like they did a good job tying everything up. Do we need a Creed 3? Because I don't know what else they can do. They got the biggest guy in the world to fight. Yeah. Adonis, he has his family journey, he's got the support of his wife, he's got his kid, he's got money, he's got the championship. Does he lose it in part 3 and get it back again, or does he lose it and not get it back? Like, do they do like a Rocky 3-5 combo? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, you have to think that from a purely accounting perspective and a critical perspective,
sure,
there has to be a Creed 3. How many part 2s are there that were a box office success and a critical success that didn't lead to a part 3?
Ghostbusters 2 is what I thought of.
Wow, very good. But I don't know, was that a box office and critical or critical?
Oh, okay, success? I guess critical maybe not, but they don't care about the critics. It's about money.
Yeah.
But you're right about the critical success on top of box office. Good point. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'd have to do some research on that. But Ghostbusters 2 came to mind, where they could have easily done a third part, but again, they didn't have the players involved wanting to do it. That was the problem.
They only made 2 of the Charlie's Angels movies, right?
Yeah, and those made money.
Yeah. So that might be another exhibit. But, I mean, in Hollywood, it's very rare that you don't get that quote-unquote trilogy.
Oh, especially today.
Yeah.
I think every movie they ever make now, movies that you don't think should warrant a franchise, if it makes money, they're going to keep telling the story. Because movies now, more than the 80s and 70s and even 90s, they're more episodic now. To tell a story. It doesn't have to be bigger and better necessarily. It's just people just want to see more from these characters.
Who doesn't want to spend more time with characters in a universe that they really love? I almost wonder, Ryan, if the Creed audience, I know that it's really hard to separate the people that are going to see Creed movies just because they're Creed movies. But if we look at it just from the Creed perspective, maybe that audience would just be accepting of Creed having a boxing match.
I've got a theory here about Creed 3, about the audience. Maybe what we're forgetting is there are people who are Rocky fanatics who don't like the Creed movies. And then there are people who like the Creed movies who could care less about the Rocky franchise.
Right.
I wonder what the audience difference is, because there are people who love the Rocky movies who aren't seeing this movie in the theaters. They're not.
Mm-hmm.
I know the box office is 100 million plus, whatever, Creed Part 2, but for inflation costs, Creed and Creed 2 isn't doing that great compared to ticket sales of the other Rocky movies. It's a different generation of moviegoers now. A lot of people stream things illegally for DVR releases or whatever, streaming releases. But the point I'm making is the people that saw the Rocky franchise in the theater, they're not turning up to this film the way they did for the other Rocky films, but they're still doing well. The African-American culture is seeing this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't see, and a lot of them didn't see the Rocky franchise the way they are. And they're really, like, when you go on Twitter, and I did like a Twitter Creed search during the film release, a lot of the people talking about Creed were of that culture, which is great, but I don't think that was happening for Rocky Balboa.
No, not at all. Not at all. How inessential Creed and Creed 2 have sort of made Rocky Balboa, right?
Right.
When Rocky Balboa came out, I really, really was impressed, and I thought Sly did a great job bringing closure to that character. But I think the work he did for Rocky and Creed 2 almost make Rocky Balboa, I don't want to say redundant. It doesn't really feel like a bridge movie to the Creed movies. I mean, you could draw that line between Rocky 5 and Creed and sort of fill in all the blanks yourself without watching Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, Rocky Balboa, it reminds me of, you ever, like, you're at a party or a work function or even at work, and you say goodbye to everybody, but then you forgot something, you have to come back in and grab something? And it was, I thought you already said goodbye. Why are you back here? That was Rocky Balboa as compared to Creed Part 1. It was like, hey, wait a second. I thought we already said goodbye.
Yeah, well, and the other thing about Rocky Balboa, when you relate it to Creed, is there's so many things that are sort of just left unanswered. Like, what really led to him having the rift in his relationship with his son? And then also, like, what happens to Marianne and Steps and her kid?
Okay, I hate that name so much. Steps. When I first heard that in the theaters, when I saw Rocky Balboa, for me, it was a real bad writing on Sly's part. I'm sorry. Even like with the Rocky character, it wasn't adorable or cute. Steps. Why are we calling this guy Steps? Every time I hear Steps, I cringe. And speaking of cringe, we don't want to forget. I had an email from a listener who really politely but chewed me out for ragging on the segment of Bianca singing.
Okay. Now, this is probably the most polarizing part of that movie. Right.
I think what the issue is, I have seen every Rocky film, and I've seen every Rocky film 100 times. I've seen every film from the time that the Rocky 3 onward in the theater. And so I'm a Rocky fanatic, as you know, as you are. There's no such thing as a Rocky expert because everyone's going to have their own opinion on the films.
Right.
But if there's a moment in the film, and no Rocky film is innocent of this. So for people to defend so adamantly the Bianca moment like some sort of sacred ground, I don't understand it. Like, Tessa Thompson's not a real singer. So we don't have to like feel embarrassed for her. She's an actress. And she's not trying to get a singing career off the ground. So this weird need to protect that moment is odd to me. Now, the arguments people make is that she's supporting her husband. Great. And the other argument people make is, like, you know, because she goes out in the ring with her husband. The other argument people make, hey, this is her career, so he's supporting her by giving her kind of a platform to show off her music. That's all fine. But here is my response to this. Those things that people argue, it still could have happened. With the track being played, you know, over the speakers, with her still walking down the ring with her husband arm in arm.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been less corny. It could still have been her song. Now, the song choice was horrible. It's no Burning Heart. Why couldn't they have picked a song that was fun to listen to? Or some sort of pump-up song? It was a weird ethereal. I don't get that style of music, and I don't have to like it. It's fine that people do. But this is kind of a Rocky universe. It can still be R&B. It can still be that culture of music, but why can't it be a pumping jam? I don't know how else to say it. Like something that pumps up the crowd, psychs up the fighter. But it almost put me to sleep. And I can only imagine what it did to Adonis. But it took me out of the film. And this is what I'm getting at, is anytime there's something that takes me out of the film, that's my reaction. So if people like this, that's great. So I like that she supports her husband. Great. I like that she has her own career that he supports. Great. I guess for me, I think if they did the fine line balance would have been play her song, have her come out in the ring with her. That's great, husband and wife. And then everything is met that we're talking about. But her singing the live and her being introduced first, not only was it a little bit confusing, I thought, are we at a Bianca show? It took me out of the movie. And it was the first part of the film where I was taken out of it. And that's why I have such a visceral reaction to it. Because I was on board all the way through this movie. And at that moment, I cringed. And I could feel cringe throughout the audience.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothered you or Mike. I can definitely see why it would bother people. I think you hit on a good point there because it definitely is borderline corny, right?
Yeah.
In a movie that's not corny.
That's right. It took you out of that moment. It didn't feel like the same movie we were watching 2 hours before.
You could also almost argue that it's the most on-the-nose sort of Rocky IV reference. Which,
a live performance, yeah.
Yeah, which could also make it a little like, did you really have to get that obvious?
Oh, I think I got in trouble. I know what I got in trouble for now. I made a deaf baby joke. I said the Bianca's baby being deaf would have been was what I would have liked to have been during that performance. But anyways, the funny thing is on our show, we try very hard to be kind of, we're very PG. We don't push any kind of envelope or boundaries. But every now and then I'll do kind of a blue collar joke and I'll hear about it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a tasteful joke, and
all right, thanks, man.
I'm fine discussing this musical performance a little bit more, but while we mentioned the baby who was born with a hearing impairment, it was one of my favorite Rocky scenes in this movie where Adonis is so broken up by the fact that his daughter's not going to have full hearing.
Yeah.
I love that Rocky wisdom where Rocky says, don't feel sorry for her because she's not feeling sorry for herself. Which
I love that. Yeah.
I mean, when you break that down, it's really him saying, hey, don't set her up for failure, and I think that's why people respond to Rocky 40 plus years later it's those nuggets that we either get from him or Mickey or even Apollo or even Duke.
Right. That was a great moment in the film. And back to Adonis and Bianca, their relationship and their story of their relationship, I loved. I wasn't quite on board with it for part one. Maybe this is a bit of an adjustment period. Maybe if I go back and watch Creed 1 again after seeing Creed 2, which I haven't done yet, I might like the characters better or be more on board with them. But Michael B. Jordan's acting or maybe him embracing the character or a bit of both really made me like Adonis a lot more in part 2, enough that I could watch a part 3, and I would have watched a part 3 because how could you not?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to not watch it. It would be impossible not to watch it. So, and I think that, there you go. I just spoke to the mind of the movie studio executives. If they heard that quote, they'd be like, there you go. See, people have to see what the story would be for part 3.
Yeah, and I almost wonder now, Ryan, if the approach they should take with part 3 would be to add some conflict between Bianca and Adonis related to fighting. We could say it didn't have as much of an impact on Adonis as Drago versus Rocky, but Adonis is physically and possibly slightly mentally affected by his fights with Victor, and he's getting to an age where he should probably consider ramping down his professional fighting career. Like most athletes, still wants to get in the ring, and there's probably some good storytelling material to be mined from Bianca being like, hey, you've proved everything you have to prove in the ring. Maybe it's time to focus on other things. And then that's the journey in part 3.
I like that. And I actually would like to add to that. What about Creed 3 is the last Creed, despite its box office, whether it's good or bad. And Adonis loses the belt at the end. The victory is he's at peace with it. He'll be the first Rocky character to lose the title, so to speak, and be at peace with it and truly embrace his family as the truest victory after that. And then you see him trading the youth of the streets type thing that they've hinted at, that he's helping like Tony Jr., Duke Jr. there, helping out the kids at the gym there. And that would be the ending.
Yeah, that would also really help separate it from the Rocky movies.
But yeah, the victory isn't the belt anymore. He puts himself in a fight. He does lose it, but he's okay with that. And he's okay. He hugs his wife. And he shakes the new champion's hand and tells him the time's yours now type thing. The victory will be that he keeps his family, that he will do what his father couldn't do, what Rocky couldn't do. Keep the family together, let boxing go, let it be just the sport that it is, but focus on the family.
Wow. Okay, I think we just wrote Creed 3, Ryan.
What do you think of that, eh?
I don't know. I think we cracked the code.
Can you imagine? Let the record state. If Creed 3 has that kind of ending, we said it here first.
Yeah. Wow. So one other thing I wanted to talk about, Ryan, was another really sort of, it's a Rocky trope, if you will, but it's very unique in its setting. And it's when they go to the desert to train before Drago 2. And we've seen the fighter go to a foreign environment to train. We saw it in Rocky 3 when he goes to L.A., and then in Rocky 4, of course, when he goes and trains in the wilderness of Russia. There was a lot of discussions I've had about how Rocky knew about this place and then also how effective that training was. I wasn't sure if there was anything about that you wanted to touch on.
Well, I found that the training sequence was, and this movie was not short, but I found that this was rushed. And I wasn't as emotional involved, even though the scenes were cool and the sequence was cool and different. I was a little bit confused as to what was going on. It didn't dawn on me until even after the movie was over that they were training Adonis to have the crap kicked out of him.
Yeah.
Because it didn't really spell it out. I know maybe I'm dumb, but maybe I need things spelled out for me. Because that's kind of what the Rocky films have done in the past. Oh, they're training him to be able to take true punishment and to, the dehydration and exhaustion. And I mean, I knew that he was trained to be stronger, and I didn't realize that he was being trained to take pain. Now, but check this out. And I wrote some dialogue in my head what they should have done to make this film 5.5 out of 5-star movie. Imagine, if you will, if this gym in the desert was run by Clubber Lang.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Can you imagine if Rocky's like, I've got someone that will teach you what you need to take on Victor Drago. And Adonis goes, well, what is it that I need? And then Rocky says, pain. And then you cut to Clubber Lang's face in the desert.
Wow.
Can you imagine that sequence?
I'm thinking a couple of things. I'm thinking of...
I know what you're going to think of. Before you even say it, you're thinking, is it too much?
Well, no. I mean...
Okay.
Creed 2 is really sort of Rocky 3 and 4 rolled up into one, right?
Sure, yeah.
I can't imagine the pop you would have gotten from the Rocky fans in the audience.
It would have been incredible.
Yeah. And especially the people that figure it out when they hear that word pain.
Right.
But also, I think that would have been really clever use of the Clubber Lang character, because it would have instantly sort of given us a backstory as to what happened to him after he lost to Rocky, because in the boxing world, a Clubber Lang story doesn't happen like that, where you come up, you beat the champ, you lose the rematch, and then you completely disappear.
My understanding was Stallone said that Clubber found God, became a preacher. So you can almost have this like a boxing rehabilitation center where these guys are literally doing church on Sunday and kicking the crap out of each other Monday through Saturday.
Yeah, I really like that, Ryan, and I think it's better than anything else that's been proposed with this whole Clubber Lang Jr. for Creed 3, which I think would be absolute and utter garbage, just because there's no reason. Apollo didn't have any beef with Clubber Lang, aside from what Clubber Lang slightly disrespecting Apollo.
Right.
But that's not something that would even be on Adonis's radar.
Right. I think that just would have been the icing on the cake. And it still could have been a short sequence, but imagine you saw Clubber there standing side by side with Rocky training this guy.
Yeah, goodness. That is... oof.
It's almost painful to think about a missed opportunity like that.
Totally. Since we're talking about missed opportunities, let's talk about another return character and your feelings on the utilization of Brigitte Nielsen's Ludmilla character.
Number one, I'm a little bit upset that people said she didn't look good. I thought she looked fine.
Wow. I didn't take that at all. I mean, I thought,
I've heard some reviews from other podcasts, and I won't even mention the names because they're not the trio, the holy trio that you, I, and Doug are. Yeah. But a few of them were kind of mean about her looks, and I thought she looked fantastic. She's 56 years old.
Yeah, it's not 1985.
I would like to see what any of these people look like when they're 56. And she just had a baby, too. I think she was pregnant during the film, or just had a baby. I can't remember.
Yeah, she was pregnant.
Yeah, and I thought she looked great, and I thought her presence on screen, I wanted more, but I guess we got what we got. I loved her utilization of that she was just a shall, pow, hungry. And this is where I felt sorry for Drago.
Yeah.
Truly, where Drago's almost like a puppy, like, oh, my owner's back, and look, she likes me again. And then when she walks out of that fight, you're like, oh, man, poor Drago just can't catch a break.
Yeah.
And you truly feel bad for him.
Yeah, there were two things. I kind of called her a prop in the fight scene where, she's basically there to be an empty chair later in the fight. Also, I thought she was great in bringing out true sympathy and motivation for the Victor character. And I think Floyd did some of his best acting work in that dinner scene.
Yes. Floyd was great.
Mm-hmm.
He was great. I was nervous about him. because I didn't know who he was. All I knew is that he looks like he could squish me with his pinky. But he was great. He didn't seem like a first-time actor. Is this his first role, or?
It's definitely got to be his first big-time role. And, yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think the work he does without saying anything in that dinner scene, I mean, you see him boiling over and you see him stewing. What he went through as a child, I mean, he was definitely raised in an environment that I don't think any of us can really completely understand.
Raised in hate?
Yeah. It's a great scene just for that, and I think the only way you can get that kind of... that scene couldn't happen without Ludmilla.
No, she was fantastic. So she was good. Felicia Rashad was good. And the only thing that was missing from her, of course, was some sort of discussion with Rocky. It could have just been a quick sequence of when he sees her at the hospital. He should have just said something. Look, Marianne, I just want to say how sorry I am for the loss of Apollo after all these years. And she would have put her hand on his arm saying, Rocky, please, it's okay. He knew what he was doing, or please, you have enough on your plate. And I'm sorry for Adrian's passing. And they could have had that moment, but I don't know.
Yeah. Now, two other things, I guess, related to returning characters and whatnot. What is your ultimate takeaway on the character of Duke Jr.? And do you think it would have been cool to have some kind of Apollo's other sons involved in the movie?
Yeah, people did ask, where's the other kids? I said they were probably took his advice. I think Apollo's kids took his advice, stay in school, but be a thinker, not a stinker.
Right.
So they probably successful. If Marianne's raising Adonis showed us anything, that she probably told all of her kids to stay out of the fight business.
Right. And
Adonis was the only one that didn't. I would suspect that the two were probably successful, whatever they were at. They had all the advantages money could buy.
Right.
So there's just no story to tell there. It's kind of weird that they weren't mentioned, but there's just no story to tell. Unless you have like a 10-hour story arc. We could it'd be a great story, the Creed show, right?
Yeah.
But I think Duke Jr. was kind of the representation of that past. Here's a guy that knew Adonis as a kid. And I think that was kind of our sibling look into the sibling life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like Duke Jr. I think it was used just enough. We have so many characters here, right?
Yeah.
We forget that his story is also about being haunted by his father's legacy.
That is an excellent point. It's, really four father and son stories if you think about it. Yeah. I think the one scene in this movie that you really get an impactful moment from Duke is when Adonis is coming back and he's sitting in his car in the parking lot outside the gym, and Duke sort of has that conversation. He's like, hey, you have to fight again. He's basically saying, you don't have to commit to anything, but why don't you come in and hit the bag a little bit? And then, of course, Adonis drives away, and we see the disappointment on Duke's face. But I thought that was a really good character moment. I mean,
it showed that Duke Jr. cared about him as a fighter, as a person. He was trying to tenderly say, hey, let's throw a few punches, no pressure. I think it was a good sign on his part that he wasn't trying to be a money grab with Adonis. He was actually trying to be a good trainer, almost like a Mickey moment. No pressure, just, if you want to hit the bag a little bit. He didn't say, if you don't fight, you're going to lose the belt. What's the matter with you type dialogue. It was a gentle push.
Yeah, and that's another thing I think the Rocky series does that other quote-unquote boxing movies don't do, and I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not the Rocky movies are really boxing movies, and you could argue, and I know Mike has argued that Rocky 1 isn't a boxing movie, it's a love story, which I would tend to agree with, but I think a lot of the other boxing movies over the years haven't taken into consideration the importance of a trainer and of a boxer's corner, which we see constantly throughout the Rocky series. I mean, we really get an idea of what a team is like, but then also the relationship between a trainer and a boxer.
Right. No, it's good. Boy, there's a lot in this film. I feel like we still haven't talked about anything. Now you know why podcasts like the Rocky Minute and our show, there's so much to talk about. Even when I listen to Doug's Rocky Minute, there's stuff that he says that I never caught on my show. There's stuff on my show that he's never caught on his show. There's just so much to dissect in these movies. They're so character rich, and there's so many lessons to be drawn from it that I don't know if we can ever run out.
No, definitely not. And while we're talking about it, do you want to let people know that might not have tried your show yet, what your show's about and what you're currently covering on your show?
Sure. If you haven't listened to my show yet, and you listen to Slycast, and I've been on his show how many times, I'm really disappointed in you people. But I guess I just can't sell to your listeners anything I say. But if you're willing to give me a shot, it is called the Rocky Series Podcast, Going the Distance, or Going the Distance, the Rocky Series Podcast. I can't remember which order it is. I think it's been 2 different orders. But we're easy to find. We're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, and, of course, iTunes and all your podcast apps. And basically what we've done, much like the Rocky Minute show, but we don't quite go minute by minute, but each season covers a different movies. And we've done interviews as well. And I think some of our interviews are probably the highlights of the show. We talk about our personal life and some of the things that the Rocky film has meant to us. And we go on some silly tangents. I like to say that our podcast is a lot like a coffee talk, but Rocky is the coffee table. We do talk about the movies, behind-the-scenes stuff, and if you can get through the first 5 episodes, you'll get through the rest of them. The first 5 are pretty rough. I've always wanted to go back and almost delete them because our drop-off rate, Craig, from episode 1 to 2 is 70%. I swear.
Really? Wow.
It is. Yeah, if you look at the stats, and and that's fine. But it's there's a part of me that thinks, should I go back and change that? But you know what? No, that's the journey we took. We're trying to figure ourselves out as podcasters, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I still don't know what I'm doing, but I'm probably a little bit better at it than I was 2 years ago. But anyways, yeah. I do want to plug our other show, if that's okay.
Yeah, I know you.
We have Worst of the Best.
We have a
podcast called The Worst of the Best. We cover a variety of topics, and what we do is we take the best of type lists. Let's say, for example, if you're into music, we pick a band and we pick their best-selling albums, and then we pick the worst song from each album. So that's kind of how we do things. So it's music, movies, food, you name it. We pick the worst from the best, and that's a really fun one. So again, it's the Worst of the Best podcast. Give that one a listen. I think it's fun.
Yeah, and the other night I caught you guys live doing the Worst of the Best conspiracy theories.
Yes, the 10 best conspiracy theories out there, and we picked what we thought was the worst one, and that was a fun episode, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So I'll include links to all that stuff, Ryan.
Thanks, man.
And I always love chatting with you, and I really appreciated your perspective on Creed 2 because especially after all the other discussions we've had that you've been able to sort of listen to that are part of this episode, I'm glad you were able to course correct some of the stuff that was talked about already. So I think it's going to make for a really good overall listening experience for the folk. This is the most ambitious episodes of the Slycast that we've ever done.
It's fantastic. I can't wait. It's like the Creed 2 saga. I can't wait to hear everyone's opinions and thoughts, and we should almost do a full episode of everyone listening to everyone's thoughts. Say, hey, probably should do a roundtable discussion to make it easier for everybody. But this has been great. I just love talking and shop with you, man. And I look forward to reviewing our next movie that's currently in the polls right now.
And we're guaranteed to talk a movie that everybody can enjoy. It's going to be lots of fun, and we'll definitely promote that as we get closer to the live broadcast. So, Ryan, I know we're all busy. I'll let you go now. Thank you again. Best to you and yours.
Yeah, you too, brother, truly. You're a good man, and I love talking to you.
Same here, man. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, and we're back for more discussions about Creed 2, and this discussion is one I'm really, really looking forward to because it's been a while since we sat down to chat live, and it is Slycast co-host Mike Kunda. Mike, welcome.
Yo, Drago done things to my TV that still ain't been fixed yet. You know what I'm saying? Hello, everybody. My God, I miss you guys.
We miss you too, Mike. I'm glad we're able to sit down and chat Creed 2. Now, before we get into Creed and Creed 2 and all that fun stuff, it's so great to hear that the tours are doing as good as they are, and it's not surprising because you're the perfect person to give those tours, and you're the only one that's doing that. It's a one-of-a-kind experience, and each tour is seemingly different depending on who the attendee is, right?
Totally correct, because I never know. They know a lot about me, but I don't know anything about them. So I can't go in being, I guess, prepared for that particular person. It's funny. We start off within 15 minutes. I pretty much have a good idea what direction I'm headed with the tour. If they're serious fans, I can forego a lot of descriptions. Like when you pull up to Rocky's apartment, 1818 Tusculum Street, a serious fan doesn't need all the setup that I would have to tell someone who hasn't seen the movie in say 10 years.
Right.
Does that make sense?
But totally.
So yeah, everything is very fine tuned, and like some people, they don't want to see any location from Rocky V. Oddly enough, I had someone just the other day who really hated Rocky Balboa, and they wanted nothing to do with any of it. They didn't want to see the restaurant, nothing. And in a majority of my tours, we go inside the restaurant, we look all over, we go down into the kitchen, upstairs. I show them some of the props that were left over, and these people didn't want to go, and I'm like, well. Wow. Okay. So yes, it's varied, and I really make everyone feel like it's about them for the 3 hours I have them in the van.
Excellent. And have there been any new sort of stops you've been able to add since Creed and Creed 2 have come out?
Oh, absolutely. We've put a good majority of them in. Of course, there's Bianca's apartment. Of course, Adonis lived there. The Front Street Gym has been an amazing addition. I know the gentleman there, Frank, that owns it, and more time. He's not always there when I'm doing tours, but if he's around, we go in and we hit the very same speed bags that Rocky and Adonis hit side by side in the first Creed. Wow. And it's amazing. He lets us in the ring. We go back in the locker rooms where Rocky gives that great speech to Adonis. Back there, I'm back there on that wall in the past, but you got to look forward. So it's really cool, and he shares stories that's what Stallone was like, some of the things that they filmed that never made it into the movie. For Creed 2, there was another speed bag scene with Adonis not wearing a shirt and Rocky hitting the bag alongside him again, but that never made it into the movie. So that's been great. And another really amazing sight is the one where in Creed 2, Adonis comes to Rocky's house down on 2504 Federal Street, and he basically, him and Rocky kind of get into a disagreement. And of course, the one thing I can't stand about Adonis is he's a little too petty and he throws those insults around. And I think we'll get into that later. But anyways, these are the big scenes that people seem to love.
Awesome. So, it's so great that the tour is cruising along and people are loving it as much as they should, because I know you put a lot of work into it and a lot of heart.
I do. Thank you. That's what it is. This is my passion. A lot of people goof on me. To this day, they still goof on me. It's an obsession. And I understand when they say obsession, but honestly, it's not. See, to me, obsession is a bad thing. You're obsessive, or it could be a bad thing. Mm-hmm. In other words, it could bring damage to your life. But this, to me, I see as a passion, because it's brought nothing but profound goodness and kindness and grace to my life. So that's the difference for me.
Excellent. So circling to Creed 2 now, I know that you have an interesting history with Rocky 4 in terms of your thoughts on that movie, and I know we've talked about it before, but do you want to just reset people on sort of where you were with Rocky 4?
I would love to.
Prior to Creed 2?
Thank you for giving me this option. I feel, what I feel like when you just said that to me? I feel like one of the news anchors who say something not politically correct, and then they get the opportunity to apologize before the show starts. So this is where I'm at right now. Okay, so as every politician in America says, let's be clear. Mm-hmm. Here's my thought on Rocky IV. I have always loved Rocky IV. When I was in high school, in 1985, I was like 18 years old. Rocky IV, for most guys that age, was the epitome of what it meant to be a man, mm-hmm. or to be a guy's guy. As I got older, I went back to my roots of Rocky I, which is firmly what I believe a guy should be, is that type of nobility that's in Rocky I. So as I got older, Rocky IV, I just recognized the cheesy corniness of it. And I think Stallone and anyone associated with the movie might even say, yeah, there was a certain cheesiness to it. So I've said all the negative things I've said about Rocky IV. It's easily track downable. What I want to say is that even though it is my least favorite, and it's like really talking about your children. You love all your children, but one just drives you nuts more often than the rest. So Creed 2 has really awoken a new love for me in Rocky IV. And it's not because of Rocky. It's because of Dolph Lundgren's performance as Drago in Creed 2. That totally captivated me and changed the way I saw Rocky IV. It gave Rocky IV gravity and weight that I never put towards that movie before. Stallone's performance in Creed 2 was impeccable. There's nothing I could say wrong about it. But it's the dark horse, Dolph Lundgren, and Florian Mutnow or Mutenow, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
They were so wonderful. I now have newfound love for Rocky IV. So anyone that's listening that goofed on me for goofing on Rocky IV, I deserve it, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, sure. And that's one of the interesting things about this, Mike, is I was talking with Doug from Rocky Minute earlier on this episode about how...
I love Doug. Doug's such a great guy.
Oh, totally. And we were talking about how there's probably people that went and saw Creed and Creed 2 that might not have ever seen Rocky IV, and they get to go back and watch Rocky IV for the first time with the hindsight of Creed 2, and it's got to make for an incredibly different first watch than you or myself or Doug got.
Oh, my God. Just myself. We went to see the night before Thanksgiving. My wife and I went to see Creed 2, and I mean, I had already been on set, so I had seen the scene between Rocky and Drago at the restaurant, and I had read the script. I knew a lot of what was going on. So I had already been a believer in Creed 2, back in the spring. But having seen it, I woke up Thanksgiving morning, and before I worked on my Christmas lights, I watched Rocky IV again, and it was amazing because the whole time I'm realizing, oh my God, Drago is going to experience such loss and such rejection and humiliation. We see a little bit of that at the end when he's yelling, yes, yep, yeah, yes, yep, yeah. We see his country turn against him then. And then to see the events that he tells us happened to Drago, I tell you, Rocky IV is way better than I've previously given credit for.
Yeah, now, and it's interesting, Mike, because if memory serves, your hopes for Drago in Creed 2 or even prior to Creed 2, your sort of end story for Drago was that he had sort of gotten exiled to, I believe, Siberia, and in this case, it's the Ukraine. But yeah. It definitely went in a direction that I think a lot of people assumed his story went.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for decades, I never really gave Drago a lot of thought because of where Rocky IV fell in my wheelhouse. And once Creed came around, I remember vividly watching Creed 1 being filmed and saying to myself, man, this is going to be really good. They could probably bring back Drago in some form. I had even had a loosely based concept of Creed 2 where Rocky was Adonis's trainer and, of course, Drago was his son's trainer, and they face each other across the ring in an Olympic showdown. They have to face off in the Olympics.
Right.
That was the little premise I had spoken about a year or two ago. Mm-hmm. And this, it's the sins of the father and sons and all these things. It was brilliant, nothing short of brilliant. And I wonder, I really want to know, there were numerous writers attached to this, so I would like to know how much involvement Sly had as a writer, how much input he had. I would, because that's not really been known. Mm-hmm. We know he wrote it, but we don't know how much he wrote.
Yeah, well, you can definitely tell that all the Rocky stuff was Sly, right?
Oh my God! Oh, I mean, he would be standing over someone's head with like an axe if anybody else wrote that lines for Rocky. No, I know he wrote the Rocky lines, but I really hope on the DVD, and I've heard some very disturbing stories that are really legitimate. I don't know how much we're going to get Stallone involved in extra features on the DVD as far as voiceovers or whatever. So I don't know. I heard there was some discontent between Michael B. Jordan and the director and Stallone. So hopefully none of that's true, and that was just inaccurate information.
Yeah, but I mean, Sly's also. I mean, nowadays stuff comes out on home video so quick, and Sly's sort of caught up in filming Last Blood and sort of focused on that. So, hopefully schedules don't interfere either.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the only thing that I look at is Sly did no press for this whatsoever. I know he's filming. He was in Bulgaria. I know that. But I'll just say, if you want to do press for something, where there's a will, there's a way. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to get into a huge discussion about it, but I know. It might have been on the Creed 2 trailer reaction and the Rambo Last Blood discussion we had a couple of episodes back, but it almost seems like, or at least my take on it, Mike, was that Rocky or Rocky-related movies don't really need the help that maybe a Rambo movie will need, and Sly was sort of coming out of the gates early with, his Instagram posts about Rambo, but it almost seems like, Rocky movies almost sell themselves, right?
Well, yes, it's totally. And Rambo movies sell themselves too.
To a different audience.
To a different audience. And the thing I've always said, I maintain this. I wrote about this. I've talked about this in 100 interviews. Rocky and Rambo are brothers on opposite sides of the coin. In other words, Rocky is the light. Rocky is surrounded by people that love him and believe in him for the most part. Rambo is what we're forced to do, what we're pushed into the corner in the darkness alone and maybe fear. So I think you're coming at two different audiences there, and then you have a third. You have the Rocky audience, you have the Rambo audience, and then you have the Sylvester Stallone audience who love everything he does. So, that's a good point, Craig. I'm not quite sure where I was going because I started rambling, but that's a good point.
No, everything except Escape Plan 2, right?
I'm telling you, if you say that name again, I'll be forced to slip my wrist. That is the worst movie in the Stallone lineup of films. It was disgusting. And as a matter of fact, when I see Stallone, I'm going to ask him for my $7.50 back. No. Escape Plan 2 was not good. There's the robot on the cover of one of the. They don't even use the robot in the thing. It's something hanging from the ceiling with cords coming out of it. I never even saw the robot throw a punch.
Oh goodness! Well, I know that'll be.
I know that's another discussion. I know that. I know.
Yeah, that'll definitely be another discussion. So let's get to the point of this discussion, Mike. And I could talk to you about all kinds of things probably all day, but we're here to talk about Creed 2, and I know you.
Okay, let me stop you right there just for a second. Let me turn down. I'm playing the soundtrack to Creed 2 right now. Let me just turn it down. It's my favorite soundtrack of all time. Okay, go ahead.
That's something I definitely want to touch on with you, Mike, because earlier in this episode we haven't talked about the music at all. But first I want to just sort of, get your initial Creed 2 feelings and your overall thoughts after you saw it for the first time.
Okay, so first time, my positives. Literally, Sylvester Stallone picked up where he left off with Creed 1 from an acting standpoint. Nothing short of brilliant. I don't think you're going to find anyone that disagrees with that. I can't say anything negative about Sly's performance. It was everything I knew it would be, and it was more. I loved Drago and Baby Drago. I love their whole relationship. It makes complete sense. And throughout the whole movie, we don't know, does Ivan Drago want redemption as a boxer or as a father? Mm-hmm. And at the end of the movie, we clearly see what his true redemption call is for. And it could not have been any more beautiful. I loved it from the beginning to the end. What I didn't like. No, let me back up. It's not that I didn't like Adonis. I just can't bond with the character. Michael B. Jordan, I'm sure, is a fine gentleman, and he's a good actor. But I can't. The first thing that aggravated me in Creed 1 was that he came from all this money, and I don't know. I still can't find the connection with that. That irked me a little bit. But this one, it was so much talk about legacy.
Yeah.
The thing I don't like is the legacy talk. Because with Rocky, one of the things we loved, Rocky didn't say how good he was. As a matter of fact, Rocky said how bad he was. He's a ham and egger. He's a regular Joe. He just didn't want to be another bum from the neighborhood. There was no discussion of legacy. The only time we heard legacy in a Rocky movie is when that crybaby Mason Dixon and his promoters, they were talking about what's your legacy going to be. And see, I don't go in for that legacy thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would never be saying something like that. I would have other people. What would they say? I don't know. That threw me off. Tessa Thompson, I think, is a good actress. I dislike her character of Bianca incredibly. I think it's a horrible character. Maybe it's because it's a younger point of view. I don't know, but it's not something I like. I don't think the two of them, Adonis and her, I don't think they have any screen chemistry. As a matter of fact, I've only seen Creed twice in the theater because I can't fast forward through their scenes. You know, and I know that sounds like I'm a hater. I know it sounds really negative. It isn't, because I understand Creed 2 is not necessary. The majority of Creed 2 is not for me. It's for a complete younger audience, which brings forth the music. Now, the first time I heard the music in the screen, I really disliked it. It's right up there with like anal probing by aliens. It offended me on every level. But then I knew at the 12th round that they were going to unleash the Rocky music as they did in Creed. What they did right, what Coogler did brilliantly in the first Creed was when it was time for that Rocky music to be displayed, when Rocky tells him, you're a Creed, and then you hear going the distance, but they do it with they do it with like this beat, this drum beat.
Yep.
And it was like Adonis was ready to assassinate anything in his way. It was timed perfectly with the punches, the falls, the dips, everything. In the 12th round in Creed 2, when they do the mixology of the two Rocky, Gonna Fly Now and Going the Distance, for me, yeah, I loved hearing the first few seconds of it, but then it falls apart. They misuse the Rocky music. They don't time it to the big punches. They don't time it to the falls or the pictures of the crowd interacting with the ring. I don't know what Capel was thinking, but to me, it did not go over very well. You were like, all right, the Rocky music, okay, no, you missed that. You didn't have that in sync. So that was my issue. Now my main issue, I got past all of that on the second. By the time I saw it with the second viewing, I saw it with my family back home in Scranton. They instructed me that I was crazy and the music was fine, and they don't even know what rap music is, and they felt that everything was fine. So then I thought, okay, it's me. I'm very impartial. My words probably don't carry the weight on the music that maybe it should be, and a lot of people really shouldn't listen to what I have to say. But before the second fight in Russia, when Bianca comes out singing, whatever it is she's singing is just horrible. It's not that it's rap. It's the song itself is horrifically damaging. I had lost my vision, my hearing, my sense of smell, my sense of taste, and I began to watch my fingers and toes fall off my body. I didn't know this song was literally killing me. So I don't know why we can't use this in North Korea or Vladimir Putin or something, but that scene from Creed 2, we should be using that to get secret information out of spies to get them to, because it's horrible. Now, everyone, and now I got to tell you, my point of view was not the only one. I did a thing on Facebook, and a lot of people felt like I did. And I have to say, a lot of people felt the polar opposite of what I felt. Some people really saw her support for Adonis and that We got this. We're a team, and that's great. But where was she in the ring taking the punches in the face and getting bruised? See, that's the shit that aggravated me. That really aggravated me. And I don't know. I'm not sure really what it was. I don't. And somebody even said, well, maybe it was an ode to James Brown for Living in America. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. It was just a bad call that I believe.
You could almost say that it was maybe Adonis never had a chance to know his father, so all he knows about his father is what Marianne told him or Rocky told him or what he saw. And, you could argue possibly that it was Adonis sort of paying tribute to his dad or doing something that he thought maybe his dad would do. I'm not saying that's where I fall on it, but I mean, that's sort of at least where you could possibly see the seeds of that idea.
No, yeah. And again, you see, I really I like to think I was open-minded on my polling that I did on Facebook. I didn't slam people for telling me that I was out of my mind or that it was for a younger generation or that I didn't understand the music. They're right. I don't understand the music. It was for another generation. I get that. They're trying to move the series forward into a new realm. I completely understand that. This is coming from an uber ultimate purist form of Rocky fanship. And I know it's not a Rocky movie. It's improper for me to call it Rocky 8. It is Creed 2.
Yeah.
I believe that. It is, Craig. We have to really call it what it is. The other thing that I'd like to say is, what happened to Rocky's guilt about throwing the towel and he couldn't talk to Marianne? And then all of a sudden he's at the hospital having a baby. Da-da-da-da-da. Hi, Rocky. Thanks for being here. Oh, yeah, you got my husband killed and you've been carrying this guilt. And, the first half of the movie was based around your guilt having killed Apollo and you didn't want him to fight, which is why you got my boy hurt because you weren't there in his corner to help him. Where the hell was the epic meeting with Marianne Creed and Rocky? I was waiting for her to walk through the doors of the restaurant, to sit down, and Rocky to have this emotional, heavy, crying scene, almost equal to what he had in First Blood at the end. Now, maybe not quite so dramatic as that, but somewhere in that wheelhouse. I thought, yes, this is going to be it. and I don't even know if that scene was filmed, but I will tell you, and I will say this to Capel's face, I don't know if this was his decision. I have to imagine, being the director, it was, and I hope to God it wasn't Sly's decision, but this was the dumbest thing they did by not having that scene in there. And I don't know who made the call.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the only thing you could maybe kind of hope is that sometime in the past 30-plus years, they had that conversation.
But they didn't. But you see, that's my thing. They up to Creed 1, they didn't. 3 years have passed. You're meaning to tell me this epic moment, Rocky's been carrying this guilt around. He goes to Russia, gets brain damage because of the guilt he has for not throwing in the towel. We hear about it in Rocky 1, or in Creed 1 and in Creed 2. The first half of the movie, like on 3-4 different occasions, he's talking about the guilt that he has. So, no, this is a glaring mistake. I cannot believe it hasn't been addressed by reviewers or whatever. I can't. But those are the only two things that either I hated, which was her singing right before he fights for the second time, and the lack of the Marianne Creed. Other than that, I have to tell you, I really loved it. I loved the polar opposite of Adonis training in the desert versus Rocky training in Siberia in the snow. I thought that was brilliant. I really, really loved that.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, but I want to cover a couple of things we just talked about. In terms of getting back to Bianca singing him out, it almost felt like too much of a gimmick for the fight that was about to happen. You'd think if he was going to do it, he would have done it before the first Drago fight, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And people said to me, well, Mike, don't you understand? A lot of these young fighters today come out with entourages singing and stuff. And I said, I know that. I think it's stupid. I said, 9 out of 10 times, the people that come out with the entourages always lose. Not always, but mostly lose. I said, to me, it just didn't seem right. Here we have Adonis is seeking revenge for the death of his father. And so that's why I get why they didn't have it in the first one. They had it in the second one. I firmly believe it was a wife is by her husband together as a team. I believe that was the intent from the director. To me, it just gave me a vomitous feeling that I can't get past.
Mm-hmm. So it was more the approach and how it was handled.
It was that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. For some reason, Living in America worked in Rocky IV because it was 1985.
Yes.
And because it's 2018, I am all pro women in every sense of the word. As a matter of fact, I would not be doing anything I'm doing today if it wasn't for my wife and her support and her suggestions. Her suggestions over the years were so subtle and simple, but I would never have thought of them.
Yeah.
And so because of that, things began happening in a domino effect. So I get why Bianca is there. I don't know. It just didn't seem the right thing for me. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, also, we sort of have been talking about Rocky not being involved. Now, I've been having a hard time getting a solid handle on why Rocky did not want to be in Creed's corner for that first Drago fight. And I've been very, very anxious to sort of get your opinion on why Rocky declined to train him and be in his corner.
I don't think there's any big answer to that. I honestly believe Rocky had some type of post-traumatic throwback to seeing Apollo die and not throwing the towel. And he doesn't want to be responsible for something to happen because Rocky damn well knows Baby Drago is a wrecking machine, as Mickey might have said. And he knows Adonis has the skill and the speed, but he just can't shake that vision of Apollo dying in his arms. And I firmly believe it was just that simple. Rocky just couldn't be there. I think Rocky would have felt, look, if I'm not there, maybe he'll think twice about it and just walk away from the fight. And when he went through with it, I think Rocky was a little surprised that he went through with it. Mm-hmm. And so there again, he's got more guilt, okay? Because Rocky knows he should have been there to help him out. So now none of this is being played with the mother, Marianne Creed, Apollo's wife.
Yeah,
she's been mentioned in just about all the Rockies, and I know the character has been played by different actresses, but the character has been quite active in the Rocky franchise. I just don't understand that. The more you make me say it, the more angrier I'm getting.
No, Mike, you're definitely putting a spotlight on a problem storytelling area. Now, since we've sort of been in the ring, if you will,
yeah,
I want to ask you about the fights and your thoughts on the fights, how they were choreographed, how they were executed, how they were photographed. Overall, how did those work for you?
Brilliant. I have no complaints on the fights. I think the fights were absolutely 1,000% amazing. Now, you're talking to a guy who grew up on old school Rocky fighting. In Rocky II, we see those giant missed punches, and Apollo Creed pretends he's getting hit. Same with Rocky, okay? We all know it. We don't gotta beat that up. That's old school. Yet there's something so endearingly beautiful about those moments. So now you have Creed 1, which has got to live up to it. And I think Coogler did a really great job in that first one. In the second one, I really loved the way Capel did it. Now, I can tell you, I knew a lot of people, and I could have been an extra at ringside. I had a lot of connections, and I turned it down. I was too busy with my tours. I couldn't get out of that. And the other thing is I never really had a big thing to be an actor. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you a lot of friends of mine, I had about 36 friends that were all sitting ringside, very close, and there was a lot of arguments going on between Stallone and Capel on the direction of the boxing. And so I'm not gonna lift a big veil on that, but what I am gonna say is that I think Capel did an amazing job with it. I think he really, really did. And Sly gave a lot of great information and tips to Capel that I know Capel took. I know that. But I'm just going to say I think he nailed the fight. He took it to a level. It's very different from a Rocky fight.
Right.
And yet I had zero problems loving it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things where we talked about how involved Sly was with the writing. You have to feel like he was probably very, very involved in the fights, because we know over the course of that series, he's always taken the choreography very seriously.
He sure has. He sure has. And there are reports where, Sly was like, okay, enough already. You got the shots. You don't need any more. And Capel kept doing it over and over and over. The fights, the days that they were there, I got so many reports off the record from my friends, and they said there was a lot of arguments going on. There were heated discussions, and there was a lot of fun laughter going on. But Capel knew. I don't know if Capel knew what he wanted. He didn't know. He had an idea. But the thing is, if you've got all these people around you, everything is set to go. 2 months when you're back in Hollywood editing, you can't go back and redo it.
Exactly.
So I don't really know how deeply Stallone was upset about it, but I think Sly was happy with the final result of the fight. I believe he was, from what I heard.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine anybody not being pleased with that. Now, Mike, one thing I did want to ask you or get your take on, because for me it was one of the more surprising aspects of this movie, is I think everybody knew, based on the trailer and just, sort of how Rocky movies work, is the idea that Creed would lose the first fight and then, come back and get a victory in the second one. Now, I think the thing that really surprised me and I thought was really creative was he technically wins that first fight against Drago by disqualification, but it's a physical loss for him and a mental loss. I was just curious on your feelings on how that first Drago fight ended.
I thought it was a great angle to come at it because, Drago was disqualified for, obviously, what he done. So, Creed still retains the championship, but everybody knew he lost the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the way they came at it, it was excellent. I mean, I never would have thought to write something like that. I don't know whose idea that was. Me, I want to give Stallone all the credit. But, if by some chance Capel or Michael B. Jordan hears what we're saying, I just want to be fair to everyone. Whoever did this, it was a great idea. I loved it.
Yeah, I got to say, it was probably the most surprising thing in that movie for me, because it was so unexpected. Of all the ways I thought that fight would end, I did not think it would end in a disqualification, but with a clear winner. Yeah, goodness, I could talk for a while about my feelings on that ending and how well it was constructed and what a creative idea it is. And one thing I will say is that historically, Sly has always been really good, right, Mike, about finding different ways to do things and not just doing the obvious.
And on the fly, too.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll do it when he's crafting his story. Yes, it's there. But when things go wrong on set, we've all heard the stories, especially during Rocky I, how he had to be really quick-footed in his mind to rewrite a scene when many negative things happened in the production areas of things. Sly had to rewrite scenes rather quickly to keep production on track, and he does it swiftly and beautifully. We've seen him do that in front of our eyes on the documentary of the first Expendables. That whole scene where Terry Crews has to throw the missile over the helicopter at the end and he shoots it with the bullets. Stallone improvised that within 4 minutes. He created it on film, and we see him do that on the documentary. He's just a brilliant man when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree, and that's part of the reason that we're doing a show called Slycast.
That's true. Now, hey, listen, you want to talk about the restaurant scene for a moment?
Oh, most definitely, because I'm sure you have a lot to say.
So here is something. This truly, I can tell you the moment when my heart changed for Rocky IV. When I was sitting upstairs in the loft area at the Victor Cafe, all the movie trucks were there. I was sitting up there with my friends, and we see Stallone's chair, we see Drago's chair, Baby Drago, Michael B. Everybody's chair was there. Now, Michael B. Jordan wasn't at the restaurant, but his chair was off to the side for whatever reason. I guess in case he showed up. So I'm sitting there, and I see Stallone walk in the morning. He gets there, and he's all dressed with the hat and the sweatshirt and everything. And I'm like, oh, my God, okay, the man is here. Now, I've been in this situation. Like, this is the third time I'm on a Rocky movie set, and he's walked through the doors, and we see him there, and he's talking and everything as the character. So, yes, I'm blown away, but I'm used to being blown away. What knocked me out and made me emotionally cry, I guess you could say, is when Dolph Lundgren came in, and I said, because we didn't know Dolph Lundgren was going to be we didn't know this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. This was my greatest hope, but there was no leaking of the script yet. And when I saw Drago arrive, I said, holy shit, they're going to do it. Rocky is going to have to confront Drago in Adrian's. Oh, my God. I geeked out on an uber level. I had never been so giddy. No, the only time my wife saw me this giddy one time, it was before Sly's comeback. It's when Sly Moves came out, and we were in New York City. He was signing books, okay? He was at Barnes & Noble, and I was in line with about 3,000 people, and I was fairly close to the front. And I'm talking to my wife, and as a good soldier, she's holding 4 copies of Sly's book that we're going to have him sign, right? Because I'm like talking with everybody, people from all over. And in the midst of talking to my wife, I see this black SUV pull up, and you can see it was a very sunny day. And as the sun came through, you could see Sly's silhouette against the darkened windows. And I just turned, oh my God, oh my God. I start screaming like an asshole. Like it was ridiculous. I was never more embarrassed in my life. But my wife got to witness that. Now, whoever else was standing there, they saw that too, but I don't know who they are, so it doesn't really matter. But as we get closer, this is one of the first opportunities I'm going to have to really be 3 feet from Stallone and speak with him. So as we're waiting in this line, I'm just hyperventilating. I'm nervous. My wife's like, calm down. Now we're getting closer, and the color drains out of my face, and I'm getting very nervous and clammy. My wife goes, you better sit down. So that was the only other time I really lost it. When I saw Drago here, I thought, oh my God. So now I got to stay calm, obviously, and I do. And so now we angled it where we could watch everything happen in the morning. So in the morning for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, it was Stallone and Drago and the director and 1 or 2 other cast members sitting in the main dining area in the very locations we would later see them film it. And they were going back and forth. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but Dolph Lundgren and the director wanted the scene to go a different way. And Stallone rewrote it and wanted to go another way. And they were literally arguing. And Capel did not want to come forward and tell Stallone, no, we're not doing it this way. This is how we're doing it. So Drago had to be the one to tell Stallone that he's going. They both want to go in a certain direction. Sorry, my wife just came in and blew me a kiss goodbye. She's on her way to work. Sorry about that long pause. Anyways, so watching this, I'm thinking, wow, that's kind of interesting. They're kind of going back and forth, and basically Stallone's like, well, can we just film it already? And so they did it, but. Seeing that take place, that was they were just like training. They were going to go back and forth on it. Mm-hmm. In the afternoon, they were going to film the actual scene. And what they had to do, they had to put a big black canopy around the front of the building because
nighttime.
It was. Yeah, because it's a nighttime. Yeah, exactly. And it's weird how they cut the film because you can clearly see when Rocky walks in the door and the maitre d' says there's some big guy back there that wants to see you. You can clearly look out the victor's window and see it's nighttime. And you can see cars going past. You can see the restaurant across the street. But the thing is, they filmed that scene the following night. the following day, they film Rocky kneading the dough downstairs, and then he comes upstairs to watch Adonis lose the first fight. And then they show him walking in the restaurant. No, you know what? Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's how it went. Yeah. I'm sorry. Forget that. I'm confusing two other things. So much has happened. So now in the afternoon, they do the second shot. Okay, they do the whole scene between Rocky and Drago, which was so epically amazing. But one little tiny thing happened in between while Sly was outside leaning up against the wall smoking a stogie. He got a visit from his number one fan by the name of Mike Kunda. About 3 days previous to this, Sylvester Stallone had just endorsed me as a Rocky impersonator, and he endorsed my Rocky tours as being the best.
Yeah.
And he put a link on his Instagram. So I had to thank him. And even though I do know the guy, we do know each other, it's a difficult thing to get in to thank him. So I was able to do that and spend the better part of 45 or 50 minutes with him, talking and laughing, and each of us, of course, doing our imitations of Rocky. And he was telling me so many stories about things going on. And I said to myself, when I saw it in the movie, literally 5 minutes before they filmed the scene, he and I were outside talking, and he was asking me about the Rocky tour and how I came up with the idea for this. And he said how in 100 years he never would have thought that. He goes, what a great idea for fans to come and appreciate. So for me, this scene in the restaurant was nothing, and I mean nothing short of brilliant. It was so well done. I wanted more of it.
Yeah.
I wanted so much more. And they filmed it a few different ways. They filmed it 4 or 5 different ways. And one of the angles was Drago was a bit drunk. Or you could tell he had been drinking.
Right.
He had stumbled a little bit as he was walking out, and you could just tell there was an air of alcohol about him. But for whatever reason, they chose to go with what they did, and I'll tell you, one of my favorite scenes.
Yeah, and Mike, I just want to say that I think it's so wonderful that you were able to experience what you experienced with Sly, because it's not something that a lot of people get to do in terms of the person that sort of inspired them to do what they're doing. So you deserved every minute you got with Sly, and I'm so happy that happened for you, Mike, because I can't even imagine what it means to you. So again,
Thank you.
When I saw all your posts about it, I was, inside I felt about as warm as I could.
Oh, that's so sweet and kind. Thank you. It's an amazing process, buddy. It really is. When I was I hate to make this about me, but I'm going to. When I was 11 years old, and watching Rocky on the floor of my parents' house, I never thought in 100 years a moment like that would happen. And when it did, it's so surreal. You got to stay cool and calm. You can't get crazy about it, because he'll walk away from you because he gets uncomfortable. Not because he's a jerk, but imagine, Craig, doing what you do every day. Imagine if someone came up to you in the midst of getting ready to put some event together, and people are fawning all over you, and you got to get shit done.
Yeah.
And you're just like, listen, I know, but and they don't stop. You're the greatest, and there's a crowd of people around you. You start to feel very uncomfortable, and like, look, buddy, I got to wake up in the morning with bad breath. I take a piss like everybody else, and I have messy hair. So, I'm a normal guy. I'm just a writer. I'm an actor. But, yeah, man, it blows me away, and it humbles me more than anything else in the world.
Beautiful, beautiful. Now, I do want to talk about that scene, because I agree with you. It is a brilliant scene, but I think also that out of all the decisions they made, and I don't know the other ways they approached it, but the idea that Drago knew this moment was coming for however long, years, months, weeks, who knows. But Drago knew that at some point he was going to be face to face with Balboa again. And the beauty of that scene for me, Mike, is how blindsided by it Rocky is, because Rocky never thought he was going to be face to face with Drago again, right?
Absolutely correct. Never. I mean, like Rocky says, it was like a million years ago. He just cannot believe this is because Rocky won. They put I know they put the statue in Rocky 3, but his city loved him. His country loved him.
Yeah.
In the Rocky universe, he is the most beloved fighter in the world, which gives another problem. You mean to tell me he's going to live in a lower class home like that? Come on, forget Gazzo, forget his loan sharking conviction. Come on, Rocky could have been a fight commentator. He could have been around talking about moving past failure, or he's got a restaurant. And let me tell you, the owners of the Victor restaurant, they do pretty damn good. So Rocky's restaurant was bringing in some serious green, okay?
Yeah.
But I suppose, if you believe the Millennium Falcon can fly, I guess you can believe Rocky doesn't have a lot of money, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, I'm sorry. Getting back to Drago, I firmly believe Drago knew he was going to exact revenge. And it took him 30-plus years to do it, but he did it. And, I was there the day Drago and Baby Drago were at the statue and at the steps. I was parked across the street with a tour, and traffic had been blocked for just a moment as the cameras were rolling. And when I saw Drago and his son staring at the statue, they made several gestures as to say, don't worry about it, we're going to get him. Mm-hmm. And one of the greatest things that Dolph Lundgren picked right up again from Rocky IV, remember in Rocky IV, Drago never had to say, I'm going to go and get you, because he knew he would. He had that wise-ass, smart-aleck look on his face. He just knew the whole time.
Yep.
Like, at the time, he knew exactly what Adonis's reaction was going to be at the first fight when he says, you are smarter than your father. And he's got that smirk. I loved it. I cannot praise Dolph Lundgren enough in this movie. I cannot praise him enough.
Yeah. Now, Mike, one thing I do want to sort of ask you, since you had a possible insight here, was I had a discussion with Doug about the fact that in that restaurant sequence, Drago stays seated and Rocky never sits down. And one of the things I really loved about it was the fact that Drago was able to be as imposing as he is and still be seated. Now, I know you said they filmed it a couple different ways. Were there instances where they were face-to-face sitting at the table?
There was one where they were filmed face-to-face, and there was another one where Drago was standing and scrutinizing the pictures. There were several different angles where when he walks out, when his son walks in, I can't remember. Do we see Baby Drago walk in at the end of that conversation?
I don't recall. It's not jumping out as something we see.
Okay, so there were at least 3 different scenarios where when Rocky and Drago end their conversation, it's ended because Baby Drago walks in the door and stands right there. He never walks to the back of the restaurant where they are. He's standing right in front of the window where the neon sign is, and he just is glaring at Rocky. And Rocky looks at him, and he knows. Right then, there was a look on Stallone's face. I'll never forget it. He knew Adonis is never going to beat this guy. Not in Adonis's current shape. Anyways, there was another one where Drago got up, and we clearly saw him tap on Creed's picture, and he would say several different things. Good picture, or I remember this, or something of that nature, where it was a real wise-ass moment, and he was telling Rocky, don't forget, I killed him. My boy's going to do the same thing to your boy. It was that type of heavy cockiness, but the way they did it, they gave it such seriousness. There was no cartoon of Rocky IV in this, none whatsoever.
Yeah. Now, staying in the restaurant, another scene that I really, really liked was, or a sequence that I liked, is how during that first Drago fight, we got to spend some time with Rocky in Adrian's, watching the fight alone on the big TV, and he's sort of coaching and rooting for Creed, while the fight's happening in the arena. And do you have any insight onto the filming of that scene, or also just your overall feelings on, Rocky sort of being there but not really being with him?
There really wasn't a tremendous amount of difference of what had gone down in the filming. They were rather quick scenes quick pickup scenes because, as you could probably surmise, there was nothing on the screen. It was literally a green screen, and they superimpose it later, as pretty much most people know that. I thought it was interesting that Rocky didn't watch the whole fight. He shuts it off. I guess he had to get on a train to go to New York to go to the hospital to see him, or was that the next day? Was it that night or was it the next day?
Yeah, it's funny. We talked about that. I don't remember if it was with Sean or with Doug, but we weren't sure either, and I think we determined that it was the same night.
It probably might be because have you seen the fight footage between Rocky and Drago?
I saw a still shot. I haven't actually seen any video.
So they filmed in the lobby of the hospital. When Rocky comes down in the movie, Rocky gets off the elevator. He walks right through the lobby and out the door he goes. Well, they filmed a scene where Drago is there with his son, and Drago confronts Rocky. And Drago says to Rocky, "There is one Creed still left. He lives, but no more." And then that's a horrible Ivan Drago accent. I know. I'm not a Drago impersonator, okay? So he pushes Rocky, who's got the leather coat and the hat on. He pushes him on top of his chest. Rocky goes backwards, and then Drago jumps on him and hits him a couple times. And then Rocky, in true Rocky fashion, gives him the uppercuts to the ribs, and I think one to the head. And then it gets broken up, and Rocky's kind of holding the side of his face, and it was great. I want to see that. As a matter of fact, in every movie going forward that's ever going to be made, I want Rocky to fight Drago for 5 seconds across the street in every movie. It was that awesome. But Craig, I think I understand why they chose not to go with it. Even though Sylvester Stallone is not the typical 72-year-old, I think having Rocky and Drago fight in the lobby might have taken down the gravitas of this moment. Does that make sense?
Yo, totally.
Even though we want to see it. And yes. I hope we see it on a DVD. I mean, you could go watch it on YouTube right now, but I want to see it on a DVD with a little bit of editing done to it,
Yeah.
That, to me, I would love that. I really would. It's right up there with hearing Stallone's Oscar speech. Had he not gotten screwed by that asshole. I don't know. What is Jeff knows who that is? That's Jeff's good buddy. What's his name?
Mark Rylance.
Yeah. Thanks for remembering, Craig. That's nice.
Well, it's funny, Mike, because in our previous discussions on this episode, Doug sort of mentions how nobody talks about Bridge of Spies and people still talk about Creed.
Exactly. Doug, people don't know this about Doug, but he's an MIT Rhodes Scholar. Doug is an amazingly high-thinking individual, unlike some people that do Slycast, whose name rhymes with Kef, Meth, and Left.
All right.
Jeff, I love you. You hear this? I love you.
Yeah.
Come on.
So we're in the hospital, and I think this is a good time to sort of talk about for lack of a better term, the eye of the tiger moment in this movie, right? Because they sort of took a beat from Rocky 3 where, for whatever reason, the reasons are different, but Adonis loses the eye of the tiger, and we spend a good part of the movie him trying to get it back. So do you want to sort of talk about the hospital sequence and then also maybe the moments between Creed and Wood Harris's Duke? And I'd love to get your feeling on that journey to the desert where Creed trains for Fight 2. Okay,
so let me tell you the one negative that irks me, and then I'm going to tell you all the positive. Craig, who coined the phrase "eye of the tiger"? What character in the Rocky universe coined this phrase?
It was Apollo.
It was Apollo. Thank you very much, sir. If your daddy coined one of the greatest goddamn phrases in the Rocky history, how the hell does that not get written into the goddamn script? And I'm sorry for the profanity, but that pissed me off. How does Rocky not acknowledge that?
Yeah.
I was looking for something like this. Yo, kid, your father used to say, "I had a tiger." It was kind of corny and goofy, but I knew what he was meaning. You know what I mean? Like, if he could have said something an ode to Eye of the Tiger should have happened, and it didn't. And that's another big miss. Okay, I thought. Oh, the one other small little tiny negative, when Baby Duke on the last round of the first fight with Drago, when he walks down steps from the ring and the bell rings and they go to face each other, he turns to Bianca and he shrugs his shoulder. Then what am I going to do? Really? That's what you're telling me as his trainer? Duke is your father? Duke, the man whose only problem was getting into the ring over the ropes, he always fell, and he spit a lot. Other than that, you're telling me you're shrugging to the man's wife? Okay, that pissed me off too. But, okay, this is the way they want to go with this. That's fine. I thought Adonis's descent into depression was excellent. I really liked the way Michael B. Jordan acted. I liked where he went. I liked how it was written. I thought it was honest, raw, and real. Anyone who has had incredible failure and moments of self-doubt in their lives will completely see themselves in Adonis in that moment. And you know, Craig, I guess it might be one of two moments where I felt a connection with the character.
Right.
I gotta tell you, I think that was really, really well done.
Mm-hmm. No, I would agree, and I'm not sure outside of a Rocky-related film that we've seen that kind of feeling depicted in a movie that involves competition. I mean, we've seen people deal with failure and depression and in all kinds of movies, but the one thing I think that these movies are so great at is really showing us what it takes to do what those guys do in the ring and what it costs you sometimes.
I think your average fan base is never going to know what it takes to be a fighter, a boxer, the punishment, the humiliation, the training, the physical, the everything you have to suffer for. So I think Michael Jordan nailed it. I really think he sold what that loss is like.
Yeah. And I do got to say, while we're talking about his performance, another key scene in this movie, I think, for him, and another scene where we got some real Rocky wisdom was the scene where we ultimately learn that his newborn daughter is going to have some kind of hearing loss, and it really has affected him because he knows, or he sort of fast forwards to the struggle she's going to have. And Rocky says something akin to, don't feel sorry for her because she's not feeling sorry for herself.
Yep.
And
exactly.
In the theater, I was like, that is that Rocky wisdom that we love so much. And it was Rocky basically saying, like, listen, don't set this girl up for failure.
Exactly right. This is something that, only I think a father can pass on to who has lived a life, can pass this on. And I think, Stallone, he had to go through that with his son Sage.
Yeah.
The same thing. And so, to have someone who's so wise like Rocky be in your corner to tell that to Adonis, and Adonis doesn't want to accept the negativity. But unfortunately, he has to go there. You've got to confront it. And then you realize, look, you're going to have a very productive life. You just got to find ways to work around certain things. And again, that was the other scene where I felt a connection. I thought calling up those tears on cue like that, it was quite remarkable. And I was impressed.
Yeah, and that was another sort of storytelling beat that I wasn't expecting, because obviously it was something that he was concerned with, if not so much Bianca, but the whole idea that as soon as they get the baby, he's concerned about the potential for her to have inherited something from her mother. So that was another beat that I didn't expect. Now I know we had a lot to talk about, but another key scene sort of in Creed's road back to the ring is the scene outside the gym where he's in his car and Duke sort of convinces him or basically tells him, hey, it's time to get back in the ring because you can't sit at home with the belt forever.
Yeah, right.
And it ends with Duke going inside and Creed driving away. I was just curious on if you wanted to talk a little bit more on that road to the desert.
It's different for everybody, right? We all learn, we all have our highs and lows, and how we deal with it's different for everybody. So, we saw Rocky in Rocky 3, lazily swiping at the bag when Apollo comes in and has to get him reinvigorated. But even then it didn't work. It got him started, but then, of course, for Rocky, Adrian had to deliver the ultimate motivating factor to move forward. Rocky couldn't motivate himself. Apollo couldn't do it, and Paulie didn't have the skills to do it. So Adrian is the one. She is the one with the strength we see in Rocky 3. Yeah, she was this wallflower, but she's the one that makes him come around. I don't believe Adonis had that in Bianca. I don't believe she made him come around. He had to go through this on his own. That's another reason why I don't like Bianca. I really, and it's not Tessa Thompson. Yeah. I like her. I think she was great in Westworld. But I just think, I don't know. Adonis had to go this journey on his own. Maybe it was intentional. They had to do it that way. I don't know. But I can respect that he tried to find his way, and he did. But let's face it, Rocky had to be there for him, when nobody else could be.
Yeah. Now, the one thing that I thought was really, really interesting was, and it was speculated in previous discussions on this episode, but they end up in what I don't think it's ever stated, but based on where they filmed it, they end up in New Mexico, and Rocky finds sort of this training camp, for lack of a better word, in the middle of nowhere, and knows that he's going to have to create an environment that will keep Creed uneasy 24/7. Now, the one thing I thought was really cool about this was it added a whole nother level to the Rocky character in the idea that I think I mentioned to Doug that he has like this Rolodex, or he was able to customize Creed's experience. Do you have any thoughts on how they ended up in New Mexico?
So I don't think it was New Mexico in the story. Yes, it was in New Mexico for filming. Mm-hmm. I recently, about 2 weeks ago, I read an article that interviewed Capel, and I could be mistaken, and if I am, I apologize. I thought Capel said where Rocky went to Russia in the snow, we take Adonis to the deserts of California to train.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the only inkling that I have that Rocky didn't take him actually to New Mexico. They just filmed it there.
Yeah. Now, do you think that was a place that was obviously discovered by Balboa, though, right? I mean, that wasn't something that Duke introduced.
Again, Duke didn't. Duke is clueless. If I wrote this scene with Duke, I would have given Duke more brains. This guy, I have a friend of mine, Chris is a Wood Harris fan, and he's a really good actor. But in this, he was telling me all about him because I had issues with this guy, right, as Duke. And I don't know if he wasn't around long enough like Duke had. Duke was like Mickey and Rocky. He had decades worth of experience to draw on, and here's his stupid son can't figure it out. So what was the initial thing? I'm sorry. I went on a tangent. I didn't mean to.
Well, who ultimately got them?
Oh, okay, Rocky. Yeah, this was Rocky. I picked up that this was Rocky being in the know. Again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, Rocky being the greatest fighter in this realm of existence since Apollo is now gone. Rocky just would not necessarily network, but I think because of who Rocky is, he just would have bumped elbows with people. People would have reached out to Rocky. I believe the Rocky character, people could go to Philadelphia. They knew he had a restaurant. I think someone from this camp who trained fighters maybe was in Philadelphia for some reason, maybe a fight. And they said, hey, Rocky's got this restaurant called Adrian's. Let's go by. Yo, Rock, I'm, Tom Smith. I own this training camp in hell for fighters who need to find their way back. It's kind of like hell on earth. So, it wouldn't surprise me that Rocky would have some type of inkling into this world.
Right. And the one thing I really liked about this, and I mean, the parallels to Siberia are clear, but I really like the idea that, kind of like how in Rocky Balboa, Duke realized they had to create hurting bombs, and Rocky knew that in this movie, or for this fight, that Creed was going to be able to take ungodly amounts of punishment, especially to his body. And the one thing I think Rocky's always good at is figuring out how to train or how to prep, and that's obviously, stuff he learned from Duke and from, more importantly, Mickey. But it almost feels like the first fight had to happen in order for Rocky to know how to fight Drago. And now, granted, Rocky probably would have had access to Drago tapes, possibly, but until you see him fight your man, you're not entirely sure how you can approach it. So it's almost like that first fight was the training film, right?
Yeah, very true. And I also think Rocky wasn't invested in Baby Drago because I believe Rocky thought he could talk Adonis out of doing it. So I think Rocky felt safe. Like he says, yeah, I seen him on the sports channels. Yeah. I think Rocky felt safe in feeling that Adonis would never have fought him. But Rocky soon underestimated his Adonis's determination. And that was a good thing because as we see, Adonis is really a hell of a fighter. I mean, he got his ribs broken 2 times and he still hung in there, much like Rocky broke Apollo's ribs in both fights. So, it was very, very interesting. I love that. And by the way, that monster that they brought in to train
in the tire?
Adonis with all the with the tattoos. This guy's a real boxer. He's a real crazy, insane, tough boxing guy. I just read an article about him, and it talks about him. I got to find where it is and repost it because I think a lot of fans like it. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So one of our takeaways in the previous discussion on this episode was how going into this training and leading to the second fight, as a viewer, who's invested in a movie and not so much the critical aspect of it, you're thinking to yourself, there's no way that Creed can develop a skill set that will allow him to beat Drago. And by the end of that training sequence, you believe it can happen.
Yeah. Here again, whenever you have Sylvester Stallone on the set, whether he wrote the training scene, he gives you tips, or he just has an approving nod of the head or wink of the eye, I don't think you're going to lose out on that. I really don't think you're going to lose out on that. We see a lot of great little throwbacks when Adonis is in front of the car running at full speed. It's with the big shots of the mountains in the background. It's very reminiscent of Rocky running along the tanker along the docks in Philly. My downside to the training, the music in the training, although it's Göransson's music, it did not move me like the music in the training in the original Creed did. Mm-hmm. And notice, I am not comparing this music to the Rocky movie music. That's unfair to do to the Creed music. It's unfair. Yeah. The Rocky music has 4 decades of emotional connections, and we're just hearing this music for the first time. So I did not compare it. I just my father loved the training scene and he got the music, but it still left me a little on the flat side. But I thought the training scene themselves were really, really good. I just wish the music connected for me a little bit more.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point, Mike, because I think that through the Rocky series, the composers have always sort of found a way to call back to previous parts of the score. And I don't think there was really much connective tissue between Creed and Creed 2. Is there a Creed theme?
There is a Creed theme. Yes, it's that there's that little interlude. If you go on iTunes, you'll see the Creed theme. You'll know what one it is, and then
it's like the do-do-do-do-do.
Yeah, that thing. And then it segues into the more rousing. It's just like just like Bill Conti's music. When we hear when Rocky gets says, "I should have broke your thumbs," and he bounces the ball, we hear that lonely music.
Yeah.
That's Rocky's theme. But that music segues eventually into the Gonna Fly Now and the Going the Distance. It's all interrelated, but that's Rocky's theme walking around Philly. So the same for Creed. I think one of the things in the original Creed, and I did a post on Facebook about this, you know, that first fight with Leo the Lion in Creed 1,
Yeah.
when the training montage they have at the Front Street Gym, that music, we see Adonis is a little petulant. He's a little standoffish with everyone, and Rocky has to explain to him, you know, he can't hold the gloves anymore like the mitts no more, but he's always watching and training. And by the end, the music goes from the steady, slow to it rises, and then we hear this all out knock your balls off when Rocky and Adonis are side by side with the speed bags.
Right.
Are you kidding me? I'm playing it right now as I'm talking to you in my mind.
Yeah.
Every one of us, you, the Jeffs, me, Doug, Ryan, all of us, all the millions of us, we were all Adonis in that scene when Rocky and Adonis are hitting the speed bag side by side. My God, what a brilliant moment. And the music took it to another level. It didn't do that for me in the Creed training montage. It was good. It was really good, but it did not blow my socks off.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a valid criticism, because this is the first time we're talking about the music of Creed 2 in this episode, so that's pretty telling. And I knew that we were going to talk about the music because I know you were so vocal about it on social media. So let's talk about the final fight, Mike. And I know that the final fight in a Rocky-related movie is always a big deal. So I'll just let you go on this one. What was your what was your experience with that final fight?
So, from the second, Rocky was wearing that Mickey-esque collared sweater.
Yes.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, in Rocky 2, when Mickey with Rocky chasing the chicken, correct me if I'm wrong. And you can punch me in the face if I'm wrong, but Mickey, doesn't he wear a very comparable sweater that's either dark brown or black? And here we see Rocky wearing a very similar one.
Yeah, I saw your side-by-side picture comparison you posted on Facebook there, and that's the kind of stuff I love about you, Mike, is you're able to key in on those details, and there's no way that was an accident.
No way, because the fight, when Adonis is in the room, he's got different trunks on this time. He's got the black and gray satin thing going. Rocky's leaning there, and he just says, "It's time, kid."
Yeah.
Didn't Mickey say that to him in Rocky 2?
Yeah.
And he's, "It's time, kid."
Uh-huh.
And so to me, it just smacks of the beauty thrown back. Much like earlier in the movie when Rocky talks about being at the zoo and if she wouldn't mind marrying me very much. How beautiful does Stallone play that moment?
Mm-hmm.
My God, it's amazing. So we see Rocky walking with the hat on into the Russian arena, where I'm presuming it's not the same Russian arena.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Vladimir Putin has a brand new arena.
Yes.
Built. But we didn't see a Vladimir Putin lookalike, did we?
No, we just get whoever that dude with Ludmilla is.
Right. That oligarch, that Russian oligarch. And we haven't even mentioned she came back.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. It breaks your heart for Drago. Like, everyone knew it was Drago's wife. And here's this Russian guy giving the kid new shorts and infusing their training with cash. Oh, by the way, I'm banging your ex-wife.
Yeah.
Like, and then Drago stands up and he goes, "Yeah, well, guess what? She was banging Flavor Flav before you had her, so there." So I think that was a deleted scene that we'll see a little bit later. But I thought it was excellent bringing Ludmilla back. Okay, so back to the fight.
Well, no, Mike, we can sidetrack for a minute because I figured we would get there after the fight. But the one thing that I talked about with Sean, and Sean is a Dolph Lundgren guy. He does a Dolph Lundgren podcast, so he's all about that. So it was great to have a discussion about this movie with somebody who's a Drago guy. But, you know, he made an excellent point, and this is really speaks to the level of storytelling craftsmanship here. Is it's not black and white. there's a part of you that wants to root for the Dragos, but Creed has to succeed that much more that you ultimately end up rooting for Creed. But the Dragos definitely had, sympathy, and that speaks to the writing and also the performances of Dolph and Floyd.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't even know if I remember rooting for Adonis. I think the closest I can say to rooting against Adonis is that I said to myself as the fight was going on, I'm okay if Adonis loses the second time.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. If Rocky were to lose in Russia, I would have burnt the theater down.
Yeah.
But here it was just. And I remember I was a critic of this Florian Mutnow.
Yeah.
I apologize for saying his last name wrong. I criticized that. He looked more like Tommy Gunn than Ivan or Ludmilla. But my God, I don't know who was the final say on that, but they absolutely made the right choice with this kid.
Yeah, and he did a lot of that. Him and Dolph both did a lot of that. Jeff Hewlett always loves to talk about that nonverbal acting, and they both nailed it, and especially in that dinner scene with Ludmilla, and you can just see the years of pain on Baby Drago's face. I mean,
yes,
that is, it's remarkable work, and kudos to everybody involved for getting that performance and capturing that emotion, because you really felt for those guys.
Oh my God! When he gets up and leaves, and Ivan goes running after him, I got to tell you, my wife was disappointed with the ending of the movie. She wanted a certain someone to remain the ultimate villain.
No.
She did not want what happened to happen. So okay, because I want your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Man, I saw the pain in Ivan's face when he's telling his son, no, I'm not selling out. I'm not kissing their ass. I'm doing this for a future for us. I don't want to live where we lived in crap anymore. I want a good life for you. But Baby Drago, who I believe I would be in his corner in what he said. No, they're making you look like a fool. These are the same people that hung you out to dry.
Exactly.
Where did you fall? Did you understand Ivan?
You could, because, Victor sort of only knows what he knows, right? And you have to imagine that he had a really, really difficult life. But Ivan probably remembers and thinks back to those moments when he was the cock of the walk, if you will, and had access to all the high-tech facilities and the lifestyle that brought. So you can understand Ivan wanting to get that back, but then you can also sympathize with Victor saying, listen, these are the people that create an environment for me that was really, really hard to grow up in.
Well, yeah, and to your point, exactly to your point, the original opening of the movie, do you know what the original opening was going to be, Creed 2?
No.
Okay, so what we got was an alternative opening. The original opening was written for Eastern State Penitentiary. You're familiar with that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so they turned one of the rooms there into a Russian disco, okay? And it opened up, instead of Drago working with cement blocks, he was a bartender. And a good friend of mine, Tony is his name, he was Drago's co-bartender. And the music is going, lights, whatever, and all this stuff. And a bunch of guys, I think there were 3 guys, they come up to the bar and they start harassing Baby Drago. And they start insulting him about his father. And Baby Drago is trying to keep his job because he needs it.
Yeah.
And things get quickly out of hand. And all of a sudden, you see this mountain of an old man come through, grabbing people by the shoulders and just knocking these guys out. And we see Ivan Drago has still got his shit going. And he knocks out these punks that are picking on his son. And then he yells at his son for not being tougher to deal with them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Don't you want to see that? You know what I'm saying? I want to see that. I desperately want to see that scene. But I don't know that we will.
Yeah. Wow. The one other thing I will say, Mike, about that whole sort of the Drago storyline is the idea that out of all the people in this movie that we've seen over the course of 30 plus years, the only one who hasn't changed is Ludmilla.
That's true.
You know,
that's true.
She is true to that character as she was in 1985, and she might be the coldest person in that universe, huh?
Yes, I would agree. And one has to sit back and say, huh, is Stallone still upset with her? Like, he had to be involved in this decision, you know? So years ago, you know, when he divorced her, when he found out about everything that she had done bad to him, you know, there's that famous story of Stallone grabbing a 35-pound dumbbell. He had a dining room table, a giant oak table, carved in Bridget's likeness. And he tells the story that he literally smashes the table with a 35-pound dumbbell after being what he felt was humiliated in front of the world when they divorced. So I wonder, like, you know, she said everything was good, and Sly said very briefly that everyone was very professional and everything was kosher. But I don't know. You just have to wonder on something like that.
Yeah, and also, you know, it probably would have been really easy, and I'm sure a lot of people, aside from maybe, you know, the hardcore fans, you could have recast that role, right?
No, you couldn't. They tried to recast that role. Do you remember in Rocky V? There was an opening moment. Did you ever see Making of American Myth hosted by Richard Brenna? It was the Making of Rocky V. You
know what? I don't recall offhand, Mike.
Well, I'm not sure how you call yourself a fan, but I will tell you, it's hard to come by. It really is hard to come by. Somehow I have 3 copies of it, but whatever. So in the opening, there was a scene with Duke putzing around Rocky's room. We see the winter coat with the big collar and the bloodied shorts and everything.
Yeah.
And an exterior room where a lot of people were partying or drinking or whatever. There was a Bridget Nielsen lookalike. You clearly could see it wasn't Bridget Nielsen. So at first I thought, okay, well, maybe this was some type of an outtake or a behind the scenes from Rocky IV. But here we're watching a documentary of Rocky V. Why would that be there? And then I went back and I looked at it again. I'm like, that is absolutely not Bridget Nielsen. Yeah. This is a Bridget Nielsen lookalike. So there was something, I feel, that they were going to bring her back in the opening of Rocky V for an extended scene. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe Sly could answer that, or someone in that universe could answer that. I'd like to know, personally.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so the last time we see her in this movie is when they leave during the fight, when it's clear that Drago's not going to win, and Dolph sort of turns and sees the empty seat, and again, some amazing nonverbal acting there. The look on his face, knowing that whatever was in their future that was good disappeared when they left their seats.
Totally. Yeah. And I think here, that was the final straw, because I believe Ivan wanted the revenge over Rocky and Apollo as much as anyone. I truly believe Drago was conflicted with himself, whether he wanted to be redeemed as a father or a fighter. And at that moment, I think Ludmilla helped Ivan fall over. And correct me if I am wrong. Are we closing in on the last seconds of the fight now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you have something you want to talk about that happened earlier.
No, not really. I mean, because it was. Other than the music, I don't want to beat that up again, you know. So you guys, anyone who's seen Creed 2 will understand what I'm talking about. What I want to reflect right here is Return of the Jedi, when the Emperor is lightning bolts to Luke Skywalker, Father, and Darth Vader has to look at his loyalty to the Emperor or look at the love he still has for his son. He goes back and forth, and that is what Drago is doing. He's looking at the towel that is lying there, and he looks up at the ring, and he sees Adonis is wailing away. Adonis has his he's got his second wind, and there's no way Baby Drago's winning this fight. And we see Baby Drago is going into dangerous territory of being hurt. Mm-hmm. And Drago does that Darth Vader turn back and forth. And then he does the most beautiful thing, and he redeems himself as a father.
Yes.
And I was so happy he did that. I was so happy because, strictly speaking, I'm not a father, but I've certainly I know a lot of fathers who have talked about this scene, and no father would have chosen redemption as a fighter in their past over the safety and security of their son. And I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Dolph Lundgren was by far the star in this movie. To me, I know it's about Adonis and Bianca and all that. I get that. To me, this was Dolph's movie. That's how I felt.
Agreed. And I thought the moment where he throws the towel was another beautiful moment. And you talked about, we knew that mentally Victor was never going to submit. Yeah. So that would ultimately cause his physical destruction. And there were so many sort of things related to Drago throwing in the towel. And one of the things that I thought, and like you said, you talked about, redeeming himself as a father and not as a fighter, but it also felt to me like that sort of sent a message to Rocky, maybe, subconsciously, that, hey, listen, I was able to throw in the towel and I was able to do something that you weren't, and it almost gives Drago a victory over Rocky, right?
Yeah, right. In a way, yes. I totally get that interpretation. I really do. I think, the only difference is that Apollo begged him not to do it. That's the other thing. Rocky knew Apollo would never have been able to live with himself. Even though he says in Creed 1, well, I think your father would rather be here with you. I think down deep, Rocky knew Apollo's ego was far superior to anything we had seen. And I think Rocky, even though he had that guilt. See, again, I wish they explored this more. I wanted more resolve on this, and I'm afraid now we're never going to get it unless we're lucky enough to hear it from Sly himself, which I hope Sly does talk about that. But one last thing to this Drago throwing in the towel. How about when Victor realizes his father did that, and he's pissed at his father, and Drago caresses his son's face, and he tells him, no, don't worry. It's you. I want you to be alive. We see the concern in Drago's face. I just, man, I'll tell you, it made me, that whole thing made me see Rocky IV in a far more generous light. I just thought, oh my God, I cannot talk highly enough about Dolph Lundgren in this.
Yeah, well, and also, there's so many psychological levels to it because you have to imagine the environment and the mentality that Victor was raised with. So to see his father do that had to be incredibly jarring.
Very much so. And then, Rocky does not enter the ring to celebrate with Adonis.
Yeah.
And, I firmly believe this was Stallone saying goodbye. Now, I know, and I have been very critical of this. In Rocky III, he wanted to kill Drago, or he wanted to kill off Rocky. So we see that Rocky is ready to move on. He's exercised every conceivable demon, really this being the last one. So he knew it was Adonis's time. He knew it was Adonis's moment, and the fist bump was perfect. So we see the camera just silhouetting Rocky, adjusting his hat in the ring with the ropes there, and it was so beautiful. It was so fitting. It was such a great way to go. And then we hear all the rumors Stallone's going to not do Rocky anymore, and I believe at this point he should not do Rocky anymore. He has passed the torch in every conceivable way. He doesn't what else can he do? I know there are rumors of Clubber Lang's kid coming back or grandson or whatever. I think that card has been played. I don't think they can bring back – if they're going to do a Creed 3, I want to see a movie with no Sylvester Stallone. I don't want to see Rocky anymore. Yeah. I want to see – can he make it on his own?
Yeah.
I don't believe he can. I do not believe again.
But that's the interesting thing, Mike, because there's no way they're not going to make a Creed 3, right? Because how many part 2s have you seen that didn't lead to a part 3?
And the superior part 2. I mean, part 2, I love Creed 1 better. I do love overall, I love Creed 1 better.
Yeah.
But Creed 2 is very, very quickly behind it. And this is done so well, not only by the critics, the fans love it, and it's made a boatload of money. So, yeah, we know there's going to be a Creed 3. What are they going to do? I don't know. I mean, I kind of saw Drago coming before it was even announced they were going to do this.
It made sense.
Yeah, it did. What makes sense to you for a third?
Well, it doesn't, and I had that discussion with Doug where I said ultimately at the end of this movie, nobody has anything left in the basement, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, the final straw, here's the final straw. The final straw is seeing Rocky's headstone with Paulie and Adrian's and Adonis going to visit at the cemetery. That's the final straw. Now, we don't need that. Why do we want to see that? I think the world benefits, and I'm not just talking my tour business, which is kind of funny, but I mean in the general sense, I honestly believe in my heart the world benefits by having Rocky alive in the ether.
Yeah.
He's just out there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's somewhere. When you go to Philadelphia, maybe you turn a corner and you bump into an older gentleman who's wearing an old hat and has a leather coat and is still bouncing a ball. Maybe you can still do that. It's not real. We understand that. But somewhere in our mind, Rocky will never die.
Yeah.
And so I hope they don't do that. But I have a feeling Creed 3 will open up like Rocky Balboa opened, with Adonis right at Rocky's grave. I think that is how Creed 3 is going to open. So we don't see Rocky die on screen, but we get it. I hope I'm wrong. Yeah. I've never wanted to be more wrong in my life.
Yeah, that'll definitely be interesting, and we'll see what comes from that. All right, so I know you touched on sort of Adonis at the grave, sort of having that one-on-one with his, or that singular conversation with Apollo, but I guess, and then we also get and this is why it really should be the last time we see Rocky. We get that amazing reunion with his son and him meeting his grandson, right?
Logan Balboa, who I think Talia Shire had a kid at 72.
My goodness, it looked so much like Adrian. I couldn't figure out how they had done it.
Oh my God! I think the kid was an animatronic on loan from Disney. The kid was brilliant. I'm telling you. And when we see Rocky, he goes, "You look just like his mother." I mean, it was played so beautifully. It's so wonderful. I can't. I'm so happy Rocky finally reached out and found peace like that. I have a hard time. I have a very hard time.
I know.
Seeing the way they left it in Creed, and they got nothing from Robert. Like I don't know.
Well, it's funny, Mike, because I talked about this with Doug a little bit. Is like Creed and Creed 2 have sort of made Rocky Balboa this sort of weird outcast, if you will, because aside from introducing Adrian's, is there anything else that we really need to take away from Balboa that, you could seemingly watch, Rocky 4, Rocky 5, and then skip right to Creed?
Yeah, exactly. Because, you don't need to know that, Robert is his son. When Milo Ventimiglia opens the door, we pretty much know he resembles Stallone and Adrian, right? Together, and the kids. So you could jump. You wouldn't have to see Rocky Balboa, and you just assume. It's very clear. Rocky says he's had a lot of problems reaching out to his son. He can't communicate because he's too scared that his son will reject him. So I don't know. I wish I didn't like that line. I loved the end of Creed 2. It was beautifully done, but I didn't like the fact that Robert felt he had to move to the other side of the continent, you know?
Yeah.
But Rocky went home, in a manner of speaking. Now, I don't know that Rocky's going to stay in Vancouver. He's got the restaurant. Philly is his life. Adrian is still in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to visit more, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe Robert will come back and visit with him or something. But and again, my God, are you telling me that Adonis didn't get paid any money to fight Drago? Which means Rocky would have got money.
Yeah.
So he could get out of that crappy neighborhood. And trust me, I go to Rocky's house from Creed 2 every day. It's a crappy neighborhood.
Yeah.
But, you know, the only defense I can say about Rocky still having money and being cheap is that in Rocky 1, Gazzo gives him, what's he give him? $50, right? To take Adrian on a date. So they go ice skating. Rocky's got $50 in his pocket, and he's haggling with the guy. 10 minutes, $10. All right, $8 you got yourself a deal. Come on, man. There's nobody here. We're not closed. We're not operating. And then Rocky says, all right, $9 you got a deal. Come on, you have the ice to yourself. All right, $10. Give her the blades. Are you kidding me, Rocky? When's the last time you went on a date? This is Adrian, the girl you've been flirting and fawning over, and you complain to Paulie she don't pay you no mind. You've been given $50 that you don't have to pay back to the loan shark. So this shows Rocky is cheap. So maybe Rocky's got millions in the bank. He just chooses to live like, you know, low end. I've known people like that, so who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
So I guess, is there any final things or final thoughts you want to share about Creed 2?
I don't think I'm going to be ripping it apart anymore. I can tell you that. No matter, I'm going to try real hard not to get drawn into conversations about the music or certain little things. And if I do, I'm going to take more of a high road. This is my swan song from bitching about Creed 2. I don't want to do that because you know what, Craig? If I take a view of this from 10,000 feet, this is a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
This is a really beautiful movie, and I don't want to be that lone asshole that's out there saying negative things about it. I love what Capel did. I thought Bianca and Adonis, I thought their acting was better, although I didn't necessarily bond with them. I thought they were better than in Creed 1, but Stallone goes without saying. He was perfect. I've already said how much I think Drago enhanced this movie. For me, the musical component is the difference why I choose Creed 1 over Creed 2.
I totally can see that, Mike. That's a very valid point. And I also want to point out that in any kind of fandom, it's always challenging to be critical of something you love, but at the same time, that really sort of defines, and I hate using the word, but true fans are able to honestly look at a product and acknowledge its faults.
Yeah. And again, if all we did was kiss the ass of the creators, I don't know that a lot of people would be tuning in.
Yeah.
I think that's why Ryan and everybody else, Doug and all the other podcasts out there, I think that's why people have such a big following because, you know, you take a very honest look at it. I mean, nobody wants to hear all positives. I mean, let's be real and talk about this in a real way. And that's the thing I think I love about what we do.
Yeah, excellent. And I would agree with you wholeheartedly. We all love Stallone's movies and what he's given us. But at the same time, there have been a lot of mistakes along the way that we've definitely talked about.
That's true. That's very, very true.
All right, Mike, this was awesome, and I know it's we don't talk as often as we'd like to, but this was an amazing conversation, and I know that if the two of us didn't have other commitments, we could probably sit here all day and just keep shooting the shit. But
I know, seriously, and I hope we get together soon too. Whether you make it back to the East Coast or I get out there, or whatever, I really hope we do get together and we could talk more.
I would love that, Mike. Thank you again, and best to you and yours this holiday season.
Same to you, my friend. I hope everyone is safe and well. Enjoy the holidays, and to everyone who listens, that takes the time, thank you, and happy holidays to everyone.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.